Hello. Hello. Today we are going to dive into what I call, what I tag as what Aras TV, a watchdog, a wrecking ball. We are talking about the media today. So, how can we call the media a protector of the people when it weighs in Nigerian life against corporate balance sheets and chooses the balance sheets if you can shout at a governor, but you whisper when it comes to a foreign company. You ignore Nigerian law or devalue in Nigerian life. You aren't a watchdog, you are a gatekeeper. The wrecking ball doesn't just hit the government, it hits our sense of worth when our media values the survival of South African brand over the dignity of a Nigerian soul. They aren't just reporting the news, they are telling us who really owns the country. The question then is, the question isn't just who is the media fighting for. The question is, who are they protecting? Why? Where and looking? The debate around Arise TV often center on whether they are the ultimate watchdog or a sophisticated wrecking ball. It is a polarizing station precisely because it leans into the confrontational style of journalism that Nigerian hasn't seen as much of in previous decades. Now let's dive into what watchdog versus wrecking ball dichotomy is in this situation. The watchdog arguments, they are seen as fearless interrogation. Through programs like The Morning Show, Arise has built a reputation for asking the uncomfortable questions that traditional state-run or more conservative private media might dodge. It is a platform for dissidents. They often provide airtime to critics, activists, and opposition figures, fulfilling the role of the fourth estate by ensuring the government doesn't control the entire narrative. I'll give them that. In real-time accountability, their use of digital platform ensure that political gaffers or policy inconsistency are clipped and shared instantly, like this one we're about to listen to. Though making it harder for the state to walk back statements, like our brother's experience in London, talking about Boala. Now, for the wrecking ball argument, sensationalism and emotion is at the core. Critics often argue that some of their anchors move beyond journalism into activity. Rufa is a clinical example. using emotive language that can inflame already tense ethnic or political climate. The clickbait trap. We all want to appear. Shares and retweets. But because Arise understands the digital economy, there is a perception that they sometimes prioritize viral moments. Of course, which is what they plan to do with Uncle Shomole for the man to prepare. They prioritize viral moment over nuanced policy discussion, which can destabilize public trust in institutions. Bipartisan perception. Of course, 2023 was a big movement and a clerical example for that. Depending on who you ask, the station is seen as having a clear ideological tilt. Of course, they are more tilted to Western ideology, to put it that way blunt. When media is perceived as having an agenda, every report, no matter how factual, is viewed by the states as an act of what? Sabotage. So is it possible to save a house by shaking its foundation? That's the question. That is a question at the heart of the Arise TV debate. Because what Wike did last week was to shake the core of Nigerian media houses when he pointed out direct to them. They pay you guys to be sitting here with me. So what are you guys fucking up? I control the narrative here. Okay. You might come with your question, but I have the final say. So on the other hand, you have a watchdog with a teeth. In a country where brown envelope journalism and state censorship have often silenced the truth. Arise arrived like a sledgehammer. They asked the question we talked about in our parlor, but rarely see on our TV screen. They have forced a new level of transparency, making it impossible for power to hide in the shadow. But when does a watchdog become a wrecking ball? When the line between reporting and roasting blur, we have to ask, is the goal to inform the citizen or to trend on X? If the media becomes so adversarial that it no longer seeks the truth, but only seeks the gotcha moments, it risks burning down the very institution it's supposed to protect. If the state calls them an enemy, is it because Arise is lying, or because Arise is the only one speaking the truth the state can handle? Or is the truth somewhere in the middle? Maybe Nigeria needs a wrecking ball to clear the debris before we can actually build a state worth defending. Some will argue. Arise TV has changed the face of Nigerian journalism, no doubt. But at what cost? Is their brand of confrontational reporting the medicine Nigeria needs, or a poison for national stability? It's a genuine question. Let's talk about the power of the press for a minute. Very important. Oh, we should talk about the state versus the press conflict. When the government calls the media an enemy of the state, who is really at fault? Is it the media for exposing the crack, or the state for letting the house fall apart? Arise TV is at the center of the storm. Watchdog or saboteur? Let me know in the comment section. Is Arise TV saving Nigerian democracy or setting it on fire? I'm dead serious on this one. The line between Watchdog and a wrecking ball has never been this thinner. So the tension we are looking at, it's a deeper, more systematic critique of the Nigerian media. The clash between the corporate interest and the national value. That was what Senator Adams Oshomole was pointing out. What happened to my connectivity?
And Senator Adams Oshomole clashed barely 24 hours after the Senate amended its standing rules to restrict eligibility for presiding offices. Oshomole's confrontation was linked to the Senate's recent amendment of its standing rules, which introduced stricter eligibility requirements for leadership positions in the 11th Senate. The Senate had amended Orders 4 and 5 of its standing rules, tightening eligibility for presiding and principal offices. Another controversial rule, which mandated that senators-elect must take their oath of office before electing presiding officers on Inauguration Day, was rescinded after its earlier amendment. The decision followed a motion moved during plenary by the Senate leader, Okpeyemi Bamidele. Joining us now on the show to discuss the controversial House rules is Senator Adams Oshomole, senator representing the Edo North Senatorial District. He will also discuss the Electoral Act as amended and allegations of over-concentration of power by the President on governors over National Assembly members. Good morning, Senator Oshomole, and thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruben Agbati, and your colleagues.
Well,
Senator, greet us now. Are we colleagues now? Senator Rufai is here. Ayo is here.
Good morning,
greet us, Senator. Is it because you are wearing a fine suit? Greet us, Senator.
Yes.
Eh?
Anyway, Senator.
You know, Rufai, I am a tailor. I needed to teach you how to make latest suits. And for Ayo, I needed her to know that her brother is kicking.
Yeah, yes, you are.
For the Nigerian wife, she is there. Okay, I am here ready to see my old friends. You fight me every day. I watch you.
Yes,
and you do one-sided punching, and I'm like, okay, one day.
Standard.
One day we will see.
You're looking dapper.
The man come prepared.
Okay, Senator. Now, we don't need to give
thank you
any...
very much.
Sharp,
You know,
ready.
We don't need to give any long summary. The subject is
You can
about
see the difference
the
between the
attempt
suits.
by the Senate to change the standing rules with regard to eligibility and procedure for access to principal positions in that National Assembly. And, we had the report of you standing up to the proposal by the Senate president. But at the end of the day, we heard that there was some accommodation, but it looks like the substantive issue still stands with regard to eligibility. What has been amended now is the procedure, yes or no. Who won, who lost on this issue, and what were your major concerns about equity, about legality and all of that?
All right, thank you very much. I think the issues are, for me, more straightforward. First, let me give you a background and ask you to confirm deal with every senator in the 10th Assembly. My view is we must not rush in making laws. Every clause, every word must benefit from scrutiny. And so, rushing, pam, at the end of the day, we have made a couple of mistakes, couple of times, making laws that are in conflict with existing law that the 10th Assembly has made, or even more seriously, making laws that are in conflict with the Nigerian Constitution. And the only way to avoid those avoidable errors is to allow for proper debate. Anything you want to do, whether it is rule changing or law making, it is important that senators have the benefit of advanced copies. Read it, study it. That is why we are supposed to have, and we do have, legislative assistants. So if you don't have enough time, you can commit it to your staff to look at it in the light of existing law or existing national constitution. But you bring important rules to the floor of the Senate without anyone having previous opportunity to look at it, and you discuss it there and then, and you pass it. Now, I have two issues on that day. The first is that I raise point of order the rules of the Senate, because the Senate president was emphasizing that he has the power to interpret the rule. That is correct. But only after the point of order has been raised, he has the power to decide, and that is the interpretation, whether the content of the point of order, as written in the rules of the Senate, have any relationship with the matter at hand. In this case, I specifically raised under 70, after all the other arguments about the morality, the appropriateness of changing rules that are working. They say if it is not broken, you don't mend it. Now, those were rushed. Now, I ask for the floor to raise my right, which the presiding officer cannot deny. That is Order 70. What is in Order 70? Order 70 is the very same rule that Senator Abaribe raised when we were amending the Electoral Act. It says, basically, that once it is raised, the Senate president is obliged. It's not out of his discretion. He must divide the House. The benefit of that is that when you are dealing with very serious matters, the constituents needs to know who voted for what or who voted against what. But much more importantly, also to be sure that what has been decided is a reflection of the views of the majority. But it is very difficult when you say the nays and the ayes, the presiding officer will choose what he had loudest. That is not appropriate for important lawmaking or important rule changing. So I raised that point of order, and he declined to allow me to raise it. And I said, no, it is my right so to raise it, but it is his right. When I raise it, he will ask me under the rule to read it out. When I read it out, both the presiding officer and other distinguished senators will be able to make up their mind whether that point of order is relevant to the matter at hand. And nobody can question the fact that when you want to change a rule, it's literally not rule for ourselves now, rule for the future. For the incoming senators, we are trying to change the rules that brought us and make more rules for those who are coming. Why not allow the next Senate to make their rules? But anyway, that for me was a procedural issue. So when he refused to allow me to raise that rule, the point of order, the following day I attempted to raise it again while they were adopting the vote of proceedings. Now some people say by the rule, I saw a couple of comments that doesn't seem to understand the issue. That I should have allowed the vote of proceeding to be passed before raising point of order. They don't understand the rules. Now, once you have passed the votes of proceedings, then you can no longer question it. Now, I wanted to question the validity of the votes of proceedings because in my judgment, because the House was not divided, even when I asked for the floor, so to do, anything he did or anything that the Senate did without following that procedure, which we are obliged to follow. In my judgment, it's an act in futility. And that is why he tried to ask us to pass the vote of proceedings, whether they are a fair reflection or what was agreed. I wanted to challenge the legitimacy and the validity of those votes. That was why I raised the point of order before adopting the controversial amendment. And as you can see, there is no better evidence of the danger of rushing than the fact that the following day, that same day, the following day, the Senate has to go through the humiliation of revising itself that it has made laws or rules that are in conflict with the Nigerian Constitution. Why should we make that mistake in the first instance? I was also suspicious that that day the Deputy Senate President had engagement in Kano, he was not around. The Senate leader also had engagement, he was not around. And I was suspicious why this change of rules will be made when these two senior principal officers of the Senate are not present. All of that raises that as to what was the intention. And let me also say this so that I can save your time. I watched your reaction to it, Ruben, and I believe Rufai too. You thought that these are elite issues. It's about who gets this, who doesn't get that in the next Senate. And I'm like, no, this is not a deep reflection before coming to that conclusion. Why? Because when African elites, particularly presiding presidents, in this case, President of the Senate, seeks to amend the Constitution to allow for another term, as we have seen in Cameroon, as we have seen in Uganda, as is already happening in this country that has been making progress, but I think Kigali is heading towards the same direction, where sitting presidents begin to tamper with the rules of tenure. That is how dictators emerge. And if it is their privilege, if it's an elite issue, whether or not a man should perpetrate himself or not, by the time they begin to do so, it is the proverbial grass that suffers.
But Senator,
when the key issue is stay put, so that's it.
Senator, no, one clarification.
Yes, sir.
You know Senator Adeniyi Adegbomire, SAN, who is chairman of the Judicial Committee, he issued a statement saying that what has changed now is the procedure. The point about how the initial decision contradicted Section 52 of the 1999 Constitution, which was, your main objection. And that now they have agreed that you don't have to take an oath before you can be eligible to vote. But the other issue about eligibility, Senator Adegbomire was saying stands, which is that you must have stayed in that parliament consecutively for 2 terms before you can be eligible to be appointed as a principal officer of the Senate. Is that clarification, is it correct?
Yeah, what SAN Adegbomire said is correct. And that is why I say the fight is not over. Because even the current Senate president, Godswill Akpabio, did 4 years. Subsequently, he lost election to the Senate and he became a minister. Now he came back this term and he became Senate president. If you add the first term, plus the current one, he would not have done 8 years. Indeed, he's probably doing the 4, 5, 6, maybe he's approaching 7 years now. So if 8 years is a minimum requirement, he doesn't have the right to preside because he has not acquired the qualification.
All right.
If he got it in error, it has to be corrected. So that is why you don't make laws with people in mind. Number two, there is another thing that Adegbomire did not amplify, and that is the word consecutively. If you say consecutively, it means the first tenure of the distinguished Senate President, Akpabio, in the 8th Senate will not count because he was not in the 9th Senate, and therefore is not consecutive. Strictly speaking, by the interpretation of the rules that have been made, he has only done, he's approaching 3 years as a senator for the purpose of ranking. For the purpose of ranking.
Okay.
And I hold the view that this is just, for me, is not adding value to the process. Notice stop any senator from being Senate president for as long as first his people elect him or re-elect him and his colleague accept him. There is no shortcut to it. That is why I gave example of distinguished Senator David Mark. He held that office for 8 years. And all he needed to do to hold the office for 8 years was to earn and sustain and service the trust line between the Senate presidency and the distinguished senators.
Okay.
Oftentimes you will hear David Mark saying, the senators are my bosses because they elect me. Because the only right you have is the one your constituency conferred on you, namely to be a senator. To be a Senate president, you are first among equals. And you know, when we turn our back and allow small things to happen, that is how Africans produce dictators that become bigger than their own country. That was just my point, nothing personal about it. I mean, for example, I know that what has informed that rule is the most publicized fact that there are a couple of former senators, like Ideta said you have to. Perhaps the most compelling case, obvious case would be that of Senator Omoagege, who was a deputy Senate president. Mm-hmm. Now he comes back to the 11th Assembly, assuming he wins. And then you say it's no more ranking because it is not consecutively. Or Senator Okowa, who was a senator before going to become governor. Exactly the same way as distinguished Senate President Akpabio was senator, and then he lost election, he became a minister, and then came back to contest and become senator again. And he was considered as ranking. Now this amendment says that once it is not consecutive, you are not ranking. You cannot even be, not just Senate President, you cannot even be a principal officer. How fair is that?
Very interesting point.
And quite a number. Nobody knows who is going to win the next election.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying that, you know, as a matter of morality, you don't make law either for yourself or make law against specific individuals that you fear will come. That is the beginning of the road to life, presidency, and dictatorship. That's why our neighbors can elect a 93-year-old man in Cameroon.
Very true.
It is someone or 90-something years old man in, you know. That for me, those are the issues, nothing personal. Akpabio is my friend.
Okay.
But anybody who knows me knows that my friendship is important, but the country is much more important than my personal relationship with anyone.
Okay. Thank you so much, Senator Adams Oshiomhole, for speaking out on this. And I mean, you're not one to shy away from controversial, hot topics. But a few things. Number one, you say that it's not personal, but in your call, you actually made a call for a resignation of the Senate president based on this decision he's made. Do you still stand by that, or have you reconsidered that? That's number one. Number two, I hear you around not making laws that would, with one person in mind. And we did make that argument on this table when the news broke. However, there are other many areas that might be considered as such. For instance, a number of Nigerians criticized the way that the Senate handled the Electoral Act, for instance. and that certain provisions in the law sort of favor the particular party, a particular group, and that you didn't speak up against that. In the interest of democracy, some people might say that the reason why you're so passionate about this particular matter is because it affects you yourself, as you would not have spent 8 consecutive years, that if you're passionate about what is fair for Nigeria across board, then there were other matters in the Senate that you ought to have spoken up about aside from this particular matter. What would you say about that?
Now, I forgot now the first point you raised.
That's the Senate President's resignation of the Senate President that you called for.
No. I did not call for the Senate President's resignation. I said, and I repeated it here now, that is the inferences people drew from what I said. I said, if you make a rule and you insist that a presiding officer, such as the Senate President, must have 8 years consecutively back to back to be eligible to contest for the office of the Senate President, I say, sir, with due respect, now that you are presiding, you have not done 8 consecutive years. You have only done, under those rules, strictly, you have only done less than 3 years. So if 8 years is a qualification, you have done only 3 years, because by the same amendment, the previous 4 years are irrelevant. They are expunged by the fact that there was interruption. So you can't count them according to those rules. And so if you need 8 consecutive years to be a presiding officer, sir, you have not done 8 years. So why are you presiding? I mean, that is what I said. Now, of course, people can interpret it the way they want, but it's about common sense, it's about reason, it's about logic. Just to question the morality of saying the qualification I have to get a job, that if you have that qualification, you cannot get a job. Why? If his predecessors, the former Senate President Ahmed Lawal, under his leadership, they had changed those rules. Because Ahmed Lawal has been in the Senate for quite some time, and even in the House of Rep. He could have made those rules, but he didn't make them for him to become the president of the Senate. David Mark didn't make those rules to become the president of the Senate. What you need is to have the support and the buy-in of your colleague. Simple. So I didn't call for his resignation. But if the law says you must do 8 years, then obviously he hasn't done 8 years. And if it's a constitutional requirement, a legal requirement, it's about the law. You can't breach the law in perpetuity. If you breach the law in error, the courts are obliged to correct the error. That is the point. Now, as for the other issue about the Electoral Act, I think people look at just one item and they didn't look at the others. First, let me speak to the word that, although you didn't amplify, you just spoke in general terms about the Electoral Act. I think the one that people are worried about is about transmission of result to IRF real time. Now, real time, you check the definition. I think my dancing friend and colleague there, Rufai always talk about empirical evidence.
Empirical.
Now, what is the definition by any dictionary of reference or Google of real time? It means immediately. Now, the truth of the matter is, intentions are good, but they are not enough. You must have an environment that will allow those intentions to flourish. As it stands today, there are occasions, even in areas where you have services. For some technical problem, you find that there's no service. Or fight. If you cast a vote and you finish and it is counted and they are recorded in the beavers and you press to send and it doesn't go because there is no signal in that particular locality, and you have to move from there to the nearest area where you probably find signal, that is no longer real time. And if it is a law, lawyers and judges will have a field day, try to define and interpret the meaning of real time. And if they hold the view that real time means now, it doesn't mean 10 minutes away. It doesn't mean moving from one location to the other. automatically the entire electoral process in the country will be in jeopardy. That is the issue of that. But let me tell you, the issue should not amplify. We have now said before, if the electoral officer manipulates or beyond his control, you have a situation in which the beavers is not working, before you can use other means to accredit. If you've done everything and it's not working. Now, under the amended act, if anyone out of mischief or for really technical reasons, the beavers is not functioning, you cannot use incident form. What the law now say is that if it doesn't function that day, you will have to change the beavers. If you can't change it, the following day you must bring another beavers and the election continues before the votes will be declared. Read it. This is to make it mandatory to cure the mischief of people saying the beavers is not working or all the beavers simply fail. And therefore we use the incident forms. And then by throw out bogus figures. Even people who are there will come back to vote. Sir, you know, whatever you want to say, I fought against election rigging. I launched one.
Wait a minute, sir. Sir, and that there's a trap there. So let's take Lagos for instance. Because what he's saying, though he's using one single beaver machine as an example, this can apply to a whole local government beaver not working due to internet connectivity, electricity, or whatever bullshit, or a whole state, even a whole region is not out of their reach, these guys. So what Senator Oshomole is saying that, as I said, let's use Lagos as a clear example. Let's say, for one reason or the other, multiple or more than 60% of the machine in Lagos, develop fault due to electricity, due to network or whatever. They will say, oh, okay, let's stop it. We'll come back the next day with a brand new machine. The trap there is, the catch-22 there is, what if the ruling party find out early enough in the election day that they are going to lose Lagos? If they find out that they are going to lose Lagos, they will, glitch will happen again to the beavers, and the beaver will know what they say. Okay, now the time has we're far gone for today. It's already night. Let's do it tomorrow. Let's bring another machine. My brother, overnight is too long of a time for them not to manipulate voters or the situation to turn around. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying there's an unspoken point there. It's a spoken word that this man is saying out loud. Because now those small things, they use, exploit the system. Just like in 2023, when the minority voice raised the same issue about their community not having access to network, everybody's saying, hey, we are not going to stop the election because of that. Okay. Guess what? They use that small minority voice to exploit the whole situation. That's what I'm seeing them setting up here. Because even the way Oshomola they talk and say with all smile, the guy they smile. They smile, they talk out. This man.
My war vote campaign as a city governor, because I didn't want another Nigerian to go through what I went through in 2007 when PDP under the policy of do or die completely rigged me out. I have to go through the judicial process and evaluate. Era Gosaikomu was alleged to have voted 4 times because his name was accredited. Now, those mischief has been cured.
They have not been able to catch
There are a couple of other things that have been done. So, focusing on one thing is not fair enough.
Senator,
Yes, sir.
I mean, you see, I'm happy we have started on a good note. But, you know, we'll normally have our fights, and we're never going to stop fighting because we are fighting for a better Nigeria. Senator, all these things you said, it's not that people are just talking. Your fellow Senator Ireti Kingibe alleged that the Electoral Act about, is it financial barriers for grassroots? I mean, there are many.
All of those things that you read out, those are speculations, they are untruth, and the taking we can't proceed with that. No, but what happened? What happened? Wanted to do that? What happened to? Just like I did on this issue. What rise up and hang on a minute. So how can anybody talk to Electoral Act? Wait. How? Wait. What happened to Section 138? That removed presentation of forged certificates as a valid ground to challenge an election in the tribunal. What happened to that? What happened to Section 138? Now, let me hear it again. Section 138 that removed that says presentation of forged certificates as a valid ground to challenge election result at the tribunal. What happened to that? What happened to that? Okay. Yeah. Let's take that one. You might say, already the tear trouser. So let's tear trouser.
It's mad.
You can proceed. Good.
The second question I want to ask you is, in reacting to the issue in South Africa, you said they should nationalize MTN and DSTV. Is it that you forgot that they are Nigerian shareholders?
I remember there are even more
in DSTV and MTN.
Yes.
So they should nationalize the shares owned by Nigerians there too, right? Is that what you are saying?
shareholders can hold on, but we take away the South African rights. And because of the issue, I'm not sure of the legal status. That's why I say you nationalize and then you reprivatize it.
The issue in South Africa, you said they should nationalize MTN and DSTV. Is it that you forgot that they are Nigerian shareholders?
In fact, I remember there are even more that should be done.
Wait, is it that you forget that they are Nigerian shareholders in DSTV and MTN?
Yes.
So they should nationalize the shares owned by Nigerians there too, right? Is that what you are saying?
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
Can I answer you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, what I said is, I am aware that MTN is quoted. And therefore, Nigerian shareholders can hold on, but we take away the South African rights. And because of the issue, I'm not sure of the legal status. That's why I say you nationalize and then you reprivatize it so that Nigerians can take it over, and the profit they are taking out of Nigeria will be retained here. There will be no South African share in it. The same goes for the other bank, RBCTH. There are quite a number of them like that. And Rufai, I am happy that after I made the point that the president of South Africa is a major shareholder in MTN. And as of the time I spoke, he has found it very convenient to keep quiet. I am also aware that during the campaign of President Ramaphosa for election to the office of president in South Africa, he made the issue that foreigners were doing the jobs of South Africans. Now the South Africans are hungry, there is no employment and so on, and they have transferred aggression against black people. So I said, when you hit Ramaphosa as president, you touch his economic interests in Nigeria, he will speak out. And call your colleagues in South Africa. Okay. They will tell you after they watch what I said on the floor of the Nigerian Senate. Thereafter, President Ramaphosa came out clearly to condemn the attack on black people. He didn't do so until I threatened his interest. But if you ask me, allow me, excuse me.
No, hang on, let me finish. When you asked,
I
beg you. But it's the same government that is saying they want investors. Okay, so how does that sound like when you can arbitrarily nationalize people's shares when they come to invest in your country and you want foreign direct investments? So if Nigerians have chaos with any citizens of any country, they nationalize their shares. That's how Adams Oshiomhole sees things, right? We just nationalize.
How? I just can't believe that Rufai can be this confidently dumb. I don't believe him. He is just playing the corporate card. I don't believe this is your opinion. No. This is not Rufai's opinion. This is the corporate entity that he work for opinion. Because no. One cannot be this dumb to put anything else before your national interest. This is the point I keep making about this media. Oh my God.
Analyze people's shares that.
No. Now, what I want, Rufai, sorry, not
Rufai.
You place more weight on wealth than the life of human beings. If anything leads to the death of Nigeria, what is the value of wealth to the death? If it is your own value system, that investment is more important than the life of Nigerians that have been wasted and killed in South Africa, and the government is not on record as having convicted anybody to prison. And I know that those in government in South Africa are making money from Nigeria economy and cutting away that money to South Africa. Now, in my judgment, and this is a matter of value judgment, in my judgment, life is more important. We don't want investors who invest at the expense of human blood. If you need Nigeria blood to service, and you do not care about Nigeria human blood because you want to attract investors, I will say, even in my poverty, I value my life. Okay. If in your own case, you value investment, etc. But you are wrong. You are wrong to say if we wait. No. Yes?
Mr. Oshiomhole, why don't we nationalize the wealth of all Nigerians rich men because people are dying in the north?
Okay.
How does that...
Come over now, Rufai. I can't, just shut the fuck up. God damn. Did you just say that? Boy, hell no.
Argument, sir. Why don't we nationalize the wealth of all Nigerian rich men because people are dying in the north and we've not been able to solve insecurity?
Boy, that is not even comprehensible. I the fuck did they even come to the conclusion before Wow. Money is good, man.
Senator,
let's start by that.
Before we go.
All right.
Senator, please, let me ask you this question.
That's your problem.
About nationalization. Even stammer.
No, you can't ask for a question with the answer. No, you are not talking to a deaf man. You have three questions you have not allowed me to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
You have obligation to listen to the person you have dragged out to come and question.
Senator Adams, now, please go ahead.
Rufai, this is to you. Rufai, this is to you.
Yes. Happening.
This is to you.
Yes.
Please go ahead and nationalize. That is not my problem. I do not belong to the excessive free market people.
Open market.
You are comparing like with your like. But I ask you the question, Rufai, is human economy, wealth, or foreign investor, foreign dollar more important than the life of a Nigerian? Answer the question.
Make I help you answer. They don't answer this question many times on Dr. Damage's show. Them, the journalists. Yes, because they believe they cannot function without that dollar. So, Senator, sorry to disappoint you, but that is the answer. They will not answer it, but that's it. They will openly come out in public, like grown time, man. When I hear people they talk out for public, I know they believe them. Like you come out in public, the whole world, telling the whole world without dollar, outside dollar, we cannot communicate at home. Come on over.
the countries, for the first time, they kill Nigeria, they got away with it. Second time, they riot, they kill Nigeria, they got away with it. Third time, they kill Nigerians, they got away with it. Under Buhari, there was an agreement. They broke it, they are killing Nigeria. Nobody is in prison for murder, extrajudicial murder. You are talking about law.
For this alone, you are coming back. We are voting for you.
In your country, even if they were there illegally, there are legal ways to repatriate them, to deport them. Excuse me,
for
what
this
is money
alone,
to the dead?
you are coming back to
the Senate. If you are a slave of wealth, if you are a slave of foreign investor, even if that investor is blood-soaked and he feeds on Nigerian blood, and you are happy with that because you want the dollar by all means, Rufai, you and I, we do not belong to the same school, and we do not share the same value system. Money is not everything for me. Whatever you want to, if you want to trivialize it and compare like with your like, compare banana with oranges, it's your choice. But I am clear, Nigerians know where I stand.
You are coming back to the Senate.
That Nigerians in South Africa, they are happy that somebody spoke for them. And even the South African president, after I spoke, and I accused him of doing nothing, and that he will go on his knees to beg. What will he has made a broadcast condemning the attack, which he didn't do before I said it. So I have no regret whatsoever.
Senator, thank you so much for your time with us.
Hold on. Senator, no. Senator, I wanted to ask you, this talk about nationalization, is immaterial, because even in the UK, Starmer is talking about nationalizing. Let me ask you about politics.
All right.
No. It is not immaterial.
It's not just to nationalize.
Thank you so much. Senator Adam?
It's not immaterial. That is the core of our
nationalization.
problem.
Even Starmer.
Jesus Christ. God. I just can't believe it. Whew. But my senator, to whom I'm well pleased, live up to expectation. If this is the only thing you don't do for the whole 4 years, you deserve another 4 years, and you are coming back. These motherfuckers, they put their advertisers, the money they are getting from advertisement from all these South African companies first before human life. That's exactly what Oshomole articulated point before them. When a media house like Arise TV is frankly in real time accused of protecting South African businesses like MTN, Multi-Choice, you name them. While they were appearing indifferent to Nigerian life lost in local or cross-border conflicts, then as far as I'm concerned, they don't fit to be called a media house, not to even talk of a watchdog. It's over. Oh my God. They literally, I don't think they know they are doing it. Or that is the script. Defending like nothing to human life. It's just fucking crazy. That's what money does. That's what corporate money does. When journalists come on 90 Minutes African Dr. Damage show, they are screaming on top of their voice, defending that without that dollar, they cannot give us what happened within us. It's just fucking crazy. I'm not bewildered. I'm not surprised. I'm just shocked that what I have been saying over the past couple of weeks is playing out. Now, so weak is tell them to their face. Now we see that here give them money. Our channel will not get. Now Finland will give them. No matter how anybody trying to paint that scenario, that was a classic. The same one is playing out before our own very eye. Oh, I foresee a day where A national movement will rise. A national movement will rise. All these people, like Bob Marley said, we got to run the balls there out of time, out of town. We'll go wipe them out. All these one, and then will be the first target. All these journalists parade themselves up and down. Then they go first collect. Nigerian media, Nigerian largest media, I think they will claim. The Nigerian largest media houses heavily rely on advertisements, advertising revenues from multinational corporations. Many of these corporations are South Africans, ShopRite and the rest of them. So if a media house like Arise is funded by these big four, that's what they call big four now, the likes of telecom, pay TV, banking, and retails. Yeah, it truly holds those entities. They are beholden to those corporations than the average Nigerians, which is what they just display. If Nigerians see they think these motherfuckers are spearing whatever bush they are spearing every morning because for their own goods, wasting their fucking time. They exist to protect the interests of those ownership of those entities. That's all. They'll go at any length to protect that relationship they are having with those people before every Nigerian is accounted for. So when the news coverage prioritize the economic stability, because that's what it is, of a foreign company, because that's why all of them, they're yada, you want to nationalize. You never get luck. Now, government official, they come out doesn't want nationalizer. When the street rise, now hashish and charcoal, una go nationalize because they will burn everything down. They say they won't nationalize. When the street rise, when Nigerians rise, the day when Nigerians go rise, know that their number one enemy are all these so-called journalists, all these media houses. Na charcoal una go see nationalize. So I decide to prioritize the economic stability of a fucking corporate entity over human life. It's coming. The media have become a tool for corporate protection rather than the voice for the people. A day of reckoning is coming. They are more of a corporate shield because a true watchdog barks when the people are threatened. This time around, the people are not just threatened, the people are being killed. Broad daylight in real fucking time. Yes, they carry the issue of MTN put for head. So even if the media focuses its energy on political gotcha, because that's what they came to do. That's what they prepared for. Believe that, oh, we are going to get Shomole today. Even though that is their priority, they prioritize that moment, gotcha moment, while staying silent on economic exploitation and the mistreatment of Nigerians by foreign interests. The only function as a wrecking ball for a national morale. It tear down local trust and in exchange for corporate patronage. That's what the game is about. Sochi, wherever you is, I saw you. I see you. I am seeing you. These hustlers, who they parade themselves in the name of journalists, while serving corporate interests at the expense of human Nigerian life. You guys, there's a number. We talk a lot about the truth, but in Nigeria, the truth often, even though it has a price. We watch Arise, we watch the debates, we saw the fire. They go after politicians with everything they have got. That's the watchdog, right? But notice where the fire stopped. Notice the silence when the interest of the massive conglomerate, the one that pays for their ads and their satellite town, the one that pay put food on their table, is online. They will go up and on. Don't defend it. How can we call the media a protector of the people when it weighs Nigerian life against corporate balance sheets? And choose the balance sheet if you can shout at a governor, Rufai and Abati. They can shout at a governor, at government parastatals. But they whipper when a foreign company ignores Nigerian law and devalue human and devalue Nigerian life. You are no longer a watchdog. You are a gatekeeper. And that's exactly what they are doing. An order has been given to them from the editorial boardroom that anytime the issue of MTN and any other South Africa company come out, they should go up in hand and defend it. That's why when Oshomole mentioned the words nationalization, they were now Oshomole, they tell you now, when the Nigerian people rise one day, maybe nationalize now we will take off una hills, now will or everything will go up in flames. It's just unbelievable.
Can I have 4 questions with the answer? No, you are not talking to a deaf man. You have
man
3 questions you have not allowed me to answer.
Give it to them.
Go ahead,
You have obligation
Senator
to
Adams,
listen to
go
the
ahead,
person
please.
you have dragged out
Give
to
it
ask my
to
question.
them.
Senator Adams,
Now,
please go ahead.
Rufai, this is to you. Rufai, this is to you.
Yes.
This is to you.
Yes.
Please go ahead and nationalize. That is not my problem. I do not belong to the excessive free market people. But you are comparing like with your like. But I ask you the question, Rufai, is human economy worth or foreign investor, foreign dollar more important than the life of a Nigerian? Answer the question.
Of course.
When a country, for the first time, they kill Nigerians, they got away with it. Second time, they riot, they kill Nigeria, they got away with it. Third time, they kill Nigerians, they got away with it.
For the life loss in South Africa, where they will try them.
Under Buhari, there was an agreement. They broke it. They are killing Nigeria. Nobody is in prison for murder, extrajudicial murder. You are talking about law. Is there no law protecting the life of foreigners who live in your country? Even if they were there illegally, there are legal ways to repatriate them, to deport them. Excuse me, what is money to the dead? If you are a slave of wealth, if you are a slave of foreign investor, even if that investor is blood-soaked, and he feeds on Nigerian blood, and you are happy with that because you want the dollar.
That's exactly what is happening.
Rufai, you and I, we do not belong to the same school, and we do not share the same value system. Money is not everything for me. Whatever you want to, if you want to trivialize it, and compare like with your like, compare banana with oranges, it's your choice. But I am clear, Nigerians know where I stand. And I'm happy that Nigerians in South Africa, they are happy that somebody spoke for them. And even the South African president, after I spoke, and I accuse him of doing nothing, and that he will go on his knees to beg. When we hit him, he has been a brokers. Condemning the attack, which he didn't do before I said it.
So,
my senator, you have done more than we elected you for. These 5 minutes where you spend on Arise, I've shed more lights, I've hit the issue at the core that the entire 3 months where this thing don't happen. When when Arise News or any other media refused to touch on. I didn't even know there was an agreement between the South African and the Buhari government. I will not know. And they are bluntly breaking those laws. These dogs, all these chihuahuas, because of the little advertisement where they run on Arise News that's blind their eye over human being that has been destroyed all over the country, everywhere in South Africa. Get over with the dumbness. They ask questions, why are no good nationality all the companies in Nigeria because they keep people for naught. That one is coming. They don't even need to keep people before we nationalize all our assets. By the time the citizens realize that we are still slaves, that this national freedom that we celebrate all the time is an illusion, that's what we will go for. When we decide to go for true sovereignty, when we decide to go for true sovereignty, all this on our media will nationalize them or burn them down. All this one will be the Nigerian own. Now, you will not go they beg, say we could nationalize the asset instead. That day they come. The time is coming when the Nigerian people decided to say yes, we want our sovereignty in real time. Now we're going to broadcast them. Then before they go burn the station then down. Because now them Oshomole we see get interest for all these companies and then they shout nationalize. We don't give a shit. So pathetic. Can't believe what I was hearing. Just unbelievable.
No regret whatsoever.
All right, Senator, thank you so much for your time with us.
Hold on. Senator, no. Senator, I wanted to ask you, this talk about nationalization is immaterial because even in the UK, Starmer is talking about nationalizing. Let me ask you about politics.
All right. Let me put it clear.
Okay. We have to go. I'm so sorry, sir. We're out of time.
It's not just
Senator,
to nationalize.
Thank you so much.
When
Senator
you take
Adams,
it out for them,
Senator
you sell it and privatize.
Thank you so very much for your time with us today. We are so sorry for the time that has been taken. So sorry about that.
If you say consecutively, it means the fourth tenure of the distinguished Senate President, Akpabio, in the 8th Senate will not count because he was not in the 9th Senate and therefore is not consecutive. Strictly speaking, by the interpretation of the rules that have been made, he has only done, he's approaching 3 years as a senator for the purpose of ranking. Okay. And I hold the view that this is just, for me, is not adding value to the process. Nothing stop any senator from being Senate president for as long as first his people elect him or re-elect him and his colleague accept him. There's no shortcut to it. That is why I gave an example of Senator David Mark. He held that office for 8 years. And all he needed to do to hold the office for 8 years was to earn and sustain and service the trust line between the Senate presidency and the distinguished senators. Okay. Oftentimes you will hear David Mark saying, the senators are my bosses because they elect me. Because the only right you have is the one your constituency conferred on you, namely to be a senator. To be a Senate president, you are first among equals. And you know, when we turn our back and allow small things to happen, that is how Africans produce dictators that become bigger than their own country. That was just my point, nothing personal about it. I mean, for example, I know that what has informed that rule is the most publicized fact that there are a couple of former senators, like he dared to say you have to. Perhaps the most compelling case, obvious case would be that of Senator Omoagege, who was a deputy Senate president. Mm-hmm. Now he comes back to the 11th Assembly, assuming he wins. And then you say it's no more ranking because it is not consecutively. Or Senator Okowa, who was a senator before going to become governor. Exactly the same way as distinguished Senate President Akpabio was senator, and then he lost election, he became a minister, and then came back to contest as senator again. It was considered as ranking. Now this amendment says that once it is not consecutive, you are not ranking. You cannot even be not just Senate president, you cannot even be a principal officer. How fair is that?
Very interesting point.
And quite a number. Nobody knows who is going to win the next election.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying that, you know, as a matter of morality, you don't make law either for yourself or make law against specific individuals that you fear will come. That is the beginning of the road to life, presidency, and dictatorship. That's why our neighbors can elect a 93-year-old man in Cameroon.
Very true.
It is something or 90-something years old man in, you know. That for me, those are the issues, nothing personal. Akpabio is my friend.
Okay.
But anybody who knows me knows that my friendship is important, but the country is much more important than my personal relationship with anyone.
Okay. Thank you so much, Senator Adams Oshiomhole, for speaking out on this. And I mean, you're not one to shy away from controversial, hot topics. But a few things. Number one, you say that it's not personal, but in your call, you actually made a call for a resignation of the Senate president based on this decision he's made. Do you still stand by that, or have you reconsidered that? That's number one. Number two, I hear you around not making laws that would, with one person in mind. And we did make that argument on this table when the news broke. However, there are other many areas that might be considered as such. For instance, a number of Nigerians criticized the way that the Senate handled the Electoral Act, for instance, and that certain provisions in the law sort of favored a particular party, a particular, group, and that you didn't speak up against that. In the interest of democracy, some people might say that the reason why you're so passionate about this particular matter is because it affects you yourself, as you would not have spent 8 consecutive years, that if you're passionate about what is fair for Nigeria, then there were other matters in the Senate that you ought to have spoken up about, aside from this particular matter. What would you say about that?
Now, I forgot now the first point you raised.
That's the Senate President's resignation of the Senate President that you called for. No. I did not call for the Senate President's resignation. I said, and I repeated it here now, that is the inferences people drew from what I said. I said, if you make a rule and you insist that a presiding officer, such as the Senate President, must have 8 years consecutively back to back to be eligible to contest for the office of the Senate President, I say, sir, with due respect, now that you are presiding, you have not done 8 consecutive years. You have only done, under those rules, strictly, you have only done less than 3 years. So if 8 years is a qualification, you have done only 3 years, because by the same amendment, the previous 4 years are irrelevant. They are expunged by the fact that there was interruption. So you can't count them according to those rules. And so if you need 8 consecutive years to be a presiding officer, sir, you have not done 8 years. So why are you presiding? I mean, that is what I said. Now, of course, people can interpret it the way they want, but it's about common sense, it's about reason, it's about logic. Just to question the morality of saying the qualification I have to get a job, that if you have that qualification, you cannot get the job. Why? If his predecessors, the former Senate President Ahmed Lawal, under his leadership, they had changed those rules. Because Ahmed Lawal has been in the Senate for quite some time, and even in the House of Rep. He could have made those rules, but he didn't make them for him to become the president of the Senate. David Mark didn't make those rules to become the president of the Senate. What you need is to have the support and the buy-in of your colleague. Simple. So I didn't call for his resignation. But if the law says you must do 8 years, then obviously he hasn't done 8 years.
And if it's a cultural requirement, a legal requirement, it's about the law. You can't breach the law in perpetuity. If you breach the law in error, the courts are obliged to correct the error. That is the point. Now, as for the other issue about the Electoral Act, I think people look at just one item and they didn't look at the others. First, let me speak to the one that, although you didn't amplify, you just spoke in general terms about the Electoral Act. I think the one that people are worried about is about transmission of result to IRF real time. Now, real time, you check the definition. I think my dancing friend and colleague there, Rufai always talk about empirical evidence. Now, what is the definition by any dictionary of reference or Google of real time? It means immediately. Now, the truth of the matter is, intentions are good, but they are not enough. You must have an environment that will allow those intentions to flourish. As it stands today, there are occasions, even in areas where you have services, for some technical problem, you find that there's no service until they are rectified. And so, if you cast a vote and you finish, and it is counted, and they are recorded in the beavers, and you press to send, and it doesn't go because there is no signal in that particular locality, and you have to move from there to the nearest area where you probably find signal. That is no longer real time. And if it is a law, lawyers and judges will have a field day, try to define and interpret the meaning of real time. And if they hold the view that real time means now, it doesn't mean 10 minutes away. It doesn't mean moving from one location to the other. Automatically, the entire electoral process in the country will be in jeopardy. That is the issue of that. But let me tell you, the issue should not amplify. We have now said before, if the electoral officer manipulates or beyond his control, you have a situation in which the beavers is not working, before you can use other means to accredit. If you've done everything and it's not working. Now, under the amended act, if anyone out of mischief or for really technical reasons, the beavers is not functioning, you cannot use the incident form. What the law now say is that if it doesn't function that day, you will have to change the beavers. If you can't change it, the following day, you must bring another beavers and the election continues before the votes will be done. Read it. This to make it mandatory to cure the mischief of people saying a beavers is not working or all the beavers simply failed. And therefore, we use the incident forms. And then by throw out bogus figures. Even people who are there will come back to vote. Sir, you know, whatever you want to say, I fought against election rigging. I launched one man, one vote campaign as a city governor because I didn't want another Nigerian to go through what I went through in 2007 when PDP under the policy of do or die completely rigged me out. I have to go through the judicial process and evaluate. That was the era in which the late August Aikomu was alleged to have voted 4 times because his name was accredited. Now, those mischief has been cured by this amendment. There are a couple of other things that have been done. So, focusing on one thing is not fair enough.
Senator.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you see, I'm happy we have started on a good note. But, you know, we normally have our fights, and we're never going to stop fighting because we are fighting for a better Nigeria. Senator, all these things you said, it's not that people are just talking. Your fellow Senator Ireti Kingibe alleged that the Electoral Act was altered behind the scene, claiming that the version signed into law is a fraudulent departure for what the stakeholders agreed upon. And I can go through a litany of many other issues because there's no time will not permit us. Is it the issue of removing certificate forgery as a ground for election? Is it restricted judicial review, section 88? Is it elite capture in primaries that people are talking about? Is it financial barriers for grassroots? I mean, there are many issues like that. So we can go over all of them. But I want to ask you one critical question.
That is correct. With due respect, Rufai, you asked for empirical evidence. Read the section of the Electoral Act that say all of those things that you read out. Those are speculations. They are untruth. And the thinking can't proceed with that.
No, but what happened?
If you wanted to do that,
what happened to?
Just like I did on this issue, you should have rise up and speak to the.
Hang on a minute.
So-called doctor. How can anybody talk to Electoral Act?
Wait.
How?
Wait. What happened to section 138? That removed presentation of forged certificates as a valid ground to challenge an election in the tribunal. What happened to that? What happened to section 138?
Now, let me hear you again.
Section 138 that removed
that says
presentation of forged certificate as a valid ground to challenge election results at the tribunal. What happened to that? What happened to that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I still have another question. Let me add another question.
No, you can add. Let's take them one by one.
Let me add the second question because of time.
Igbo man say, hurry the tear trouser. So
no, not the tear trouser. Make I ask my question.
But if you insist, you can proceed.
Good. The second question I want to ask you is, in reacting to the issue in South Africa, you said they should nationalize MTN and DSTV. Is it that you forgot that they are Nigerian shareholders?
In fact, I remember there are even more that should be done.
Wait, is it that you forget that they are Nigerian shareholders in DSTV and MTN?
Yes.
So they should nationalize the shares owned by Nigerians there too, right? Is that what you are saying?
Can I answer? Can I answer you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, what I said is, I am aware that MTN is quoted. And therefore, Nigerian shareholders can hold on, but we take away the South African rights. And because of the issue, I'm not sure of the legal status, that's why I say you nationalize and then you reprivatize it so that Nigerians can take it over and the profit they are taking out of Nigeria will be retained here. There will be no South African share in it. The same goes for the other bank, RBCTH. There are quite a number of them like that. And Rufai, I am happy that after I made the point that the president of South Africa is a major shareholder in MTN. And as of the time I spoke, he has found it very convenient to keep quiet. I am also aware that during the campaign of President Ramaphosa for election to the office of president in South Africa, he made the issue that foreigners were doing the jobs of South Africans. Now the South Africans are hungry, there is no employment and so on, and they have transferred aggression against black people. So I said, when you hit Ramaphosa as president, you touch his economic interest in Nigeria, he will speak out. And call your colleagues in South Africa. Okay. They will tell you after they watch what I said on the floor of the Nigerian Senate. Thereafter, President Ramaphosa came out clearly to condemn the attack on black people. He didn't do so until I threatened his interest. But if you ask me, allow me, excuse me.
No, hang on, let me finish. When you asked, I beg you. But it's the same government that is saying they want investors. So how does that sound like when you can arbitrarily nationalize people's shares when they come to invest in your country and you want foreign direct investments? So if Nigerians have chaos with any citizen of any country, they nationalize their shares. That's how Adams Oshiomhole sees things, right? We just nationalize people's shares like that.
No. Now, what I want...
That's what you're saying.
Rufai.
Go ahead.
You place more weight on wealth than...
There's no difference between him and Rufai.
If anything leads to the death of Nigeria, what is the value of wealth to the dead? If it is your own value system, that investment is more important than the life of Nigerians that are being wasted and killed in South Africa, and the government is not on record as having convicted anybody to prison. And I know that those in government in South Africa are making money from Nigerian economy and cutting away that money to South Africa. Now, in my judgment, and this is a matter of value judgment, in my judgment, life is more important. We don't want investors who invest at the expense of human blood. If you need Nigerian blood to service and you do not care about Nigerian human blood because you want to attract investors, I will say, even in my poverty, I value my life.
Okay.
If in your own case you value investment, etc. But you are wrong. You are wrong to say if we wait. No. Yes.
Mr. Ashame, why don't we nationalize the wealth of all Nigerians rich men because
the
people are dying in the
dumbest
north?
Okay.
How does that argument sound? Why don't we nationalize the wealth of all Nigerian rich men because people are dying in the north?
No worry. Nationalization.
Before we go.
All right.
No, Senator, please, let me ask you this question.
That's your
When it's
problem.
time to burn it down,
Even
we'll
start-
know
No,
what
you
you
can ask
will.
4 questions with the answer. No, you are not talking to a deaf man. You have 3 questions you have not allowed me to answer.
They won't rush you.
You have
They
obligation
catch
to
you.
listen to the person you have dragged out to
Yes,
come and
I don't know
question.
you prepare
Senator
come.
Adams, please go ahead.
Rufai, this is to you. Rufai, this is to you.
Yes.
This is to you.
Yes.
Please go ahead and nationalize. That is not my problem. I do not belong to the free market people.
And then
But
they
you
sponsor.
are
Then they
comparing
sponsor
like
them.
with your like. But I ask you the question.
And the free market community,
is human
they
economy
advertise on their channel.
worth
So they
or
will
foreign
defend them with
investor,
their
foreign
blood
dollar more
instead.
important than the life of a Nigerian? Answer the question. When a
Slaves.
country, for the first time they kill Nigerians, they got away with it. Second time they riot, they kill Nigerians, they got away with it. Third time they kill Nigerians, they got away with it. Under Buhari, there was an agreement. They broke it. They are killing Nigeria. Nobody is in prison for murder, extrajudicial murder. You are talking about law. Is there no law protecting the life of foreigners who live in your country? Even if they were there illegally, there are legal ways to repatriate them, to deport them. Excuse me, what is money to the dead? If you are a slave of wealth, if you are a slave of foreign investor, even if that investor is blood-soaked and it feeds on Nigerian blood, and you are happy with that because you want the dollar by all means, Rufai, you and I, we do not belong to the same school, and we do not share the same value system. Money is not everything for me. Whatever you want to, if you want to trivialize it and compare like with your like, compare banana with
for
oranges,
this one
it's your
alone,
choice.
you have
But I am
performed
clear, Nigerians know where I stand.
beyond
And I'm happy that
expectation.
Nigerians
You are
in
coming
South
back.
Africa,
We
they
will
are
give
happy
you
that
free
somebody
ticket
spoke for them.
to come
And
back
even
to
the
the
South
Senate.
African president, after I spoke and I accused him
We
of doing nothing,
need
and
energy
that he
like
will
this.
go on his knees to beg, when we hit him, he has made a broadcast condemning the attack, which he didn't do before I said it.
All
so
right, Senator,
I have no regret whatsoever.
All right, Senator, thank you so much for your time with us.
And we have no
Senator,
regret.
No. Senator,
Say about it.
I wanted to ask you, this talk about nationalization is immaterial because even in the UK, Starmer is talking about nationalization.
Nobody
Let
cares.
me ask you about politics.
You guys are fucked up.
Clear.
Okay,
What,
we have to go. I'm so sorry, sir. We're out of time.
It's not just
Senator,
to nationalize.
Thank you so much.
When
Senator
you take
Adams,
it out for them, you sell it and privatize.
Thank you so very much for your time with us today. We are so sorry for the time.
Abati, shame on you.
So
you don't fuck up. It's too late. Too late. These are the same fools where Dangote truck go kill Nigerian. They go say, burn it down. Burn it down. All of them go dey bag like chihuahuas. Now, they don't hit them where it hurt most. That's the only way to treat all these people. Hit them where it hurts. Hit them where their money dey. Na MTN. Now be their biggest advertiser. And then they give them money. So they value the relationship they had with MTN center around money over the ordinary Nigerian life. I said, very pathetic people. Useless set of people. They were triggered. All of them. They were ready to defend MTN and multi-choice. I don't know, say my uncle self. Oshimole came prepared. He came with every grenade, all the missile ready. Useless motherfuckers. Now only nationalization, privatization, Oshimole propose una the squivel. There will come a time where a generation will rise up and say, come, We know they even want nationalize, privatize. Let's burn it down. I will see where I go wrong go. As you've been making this point on Dr. Damage, these motherfuckers prioritize the money that they are given. Even though too, the journalists that will come on air, every opportunity they get, they will begin scream, without the money, without the dollar, we cannot do our job. Like grown men and women in public. Like it just behooves me. I just don't understand why some people just no be their fault. The country is still a colony, so I'm not surprised when the citizenry, supposedly citizenry, are acting like slaves. Fucking crazy. Atiku, I think I'm with you on this your point. 2027, Atiku rejects presidential ticket zoning to South, says it will hand Tinubu the victory. I agree with you, not based on the reason you were giving. I'm agreeing with you because it's a democracy. Every Nigerian is entitled to run for the office at any given time. Atiku argued that presenting another Southern candidate against sitting Southern presidents lack political strategy, has no historical precedent in Nigerian democracy. Supported, I agree, 100%. According to the statement, opposition party must focus on building a formidable coalition capable of defeating the incumbent rather than making what it describes as sentimental or symbolic decision. Facts. Atiku Camp questioned the viability of Southern opposition candidate on sitting a Southern incumbent president. At the core of the question is, how does a Southern opposition candidate realistically unseat a sitting Southern president? The statement read. That's a good question, but at the same time, you don't fly. That should not be a reason. Nigerian political, at the core of the question is, how does a Southern opposition candidate realistically unseat the Southern? Easy question now. Nigerian political history offers no precedent for such an outcome. To insist otherwise is to enter the contest already defeated. Yes. The statement suggests that if the opposition insists on zoning the presidency to the south, it may as well allow Tinubu seek another term without fielding a rival candidate from the same region. According to Article CAM, the strategy, like the political strength and national appeal, required to dislodge an incumbent president. It seems as if the goal is just to take out the president, not necessarily to change anything. The former vice president CAM also criticized proponents of Southern zoning, describing the agitation as intellectually dishonest and disconnected from present political reality. I agree too. Defeating an incumbent president requires realism, not romanticism. Romanticism strategy, not sentiment, honesty, not selective memory. The statements are there. The further argued the opposition leader to decide further their priority was to make a symbolic political statement or genuinely winning power in 2027. I will argue they just want to contest. They just want to contest. Like my coach once said, Constantine, just go and contest. Go and compete. To him, competing is enough for him. It becomes difficult to understand the justice in an argument that seeks to deepen an already existing imbalance under the disguise of equity. The statement noted. It is intellectually dishonest. The principle do not become scared only when they align with personal ambition, the statement concluded. It has a good argument, but is it going to scale? It depends on how much money is put behind. Fortunately, he's not from South Africa, so they can't speak for him. The Abatis and the Mr. Empirical evidence will not hold their ground for him. He is not coming from South Africa. You will pay for it. Joe Bukwe won opposition against stopping Tinubu re-election. All these World Health Organization. Now don't start again, Abby. Everything now, virus, now pandemic. You will not have become vice president without zoning. Uncle Chico Blaza Chico. See, it was just a true banter, unnecessary jab, just to waste our time. Yes, it's not an accusation, it's a statement of facts. Shomole takes Papa Rufaro saying accusing him of one-sided. It's not an accusation. There's a potency in that. It's potent. Shayalo Okonkozo reviewed those who submitted his name to US. They Fubara dump APC for NDC. Holy shit. I thought I was come. There's no way Fubara will come back now. That's you go. You are. It's literally a course on Tinubu administration. You don't enter. It's not part of Tinubu history, Tinubu legacy. That at one point in his democratically, a time as a president of a democratically elected. It will be in his record that it is during his tenure democracy was breached, and a democratically elected governor was forced out of his electoral mandate for 6 months. That's a comma already in his legacy. And I said it then that he no will ever forgive Fubara. Nah, you don't go that far and you expect to be pardoned. No, you're not coming back. And you cannot be trusted. The very first time where they give you power, your very first time, they just hold this small one first. You fuck up. It's not coming back. The guy is not coming back. It's one to be Fubara. We can see. The former technical assistant to revert a government employee, employment generation and employment blessing Fubara has defected from all repressive. A former university assistant under which party first? Make I see the trouble coming. Everyone say will be okay. I like that. I will say that okay go stick. How's it that okay go stick? Ọlọ́run mi mo wá dúpẹ́. Ọlọ́run mi mo wá dúpẹ́.
think the Prime Minister himself is wanting to highlight is among those who want him to go, there is no unanimity, there is no confidence in who they want to replace him. And that, I think, is the crucial question now, is does a candidate, does a leadership rival come forward? Because that needs to happen for there to be an actual leadership contest within the Labour Party.
And the Prime Minister has just left Downing Street to go on a visit with Pat McFadden this afternoon to talk about apprenticeships. He's literally rolling from one difficult day to another at the moment, because tomorrow, don't forget, once he's been summoned by Black Rod and the King has read the speech, they come back into the chamber. There'll be a huge debate about the King's speech, and there will be MPs on his own backbenches who stand up and publicly call on him to go.
This is not ending anytime soon, and that King's speech debate and then the vote that comes at the end of it, that will be the first major test of authority for Keir Starmer and for the government. Don't forget that at the last King's speech, Keir Starmer removed the whip from a handful of Labour MPs who voted to remove the two-child cap on benefits for children in larger families. So he had the authority and the confidence of the party to remove the Labour whip from a handful of MPs who rebelled on that vote. This time round, there is no way that I can see politically he has the authority to stamp his view and his vision and his control of the party in the same way that he did after the last King's speech. So that will be a major test of his authority, a major moment which no doubt we'll see highlighted by their political opponents, Conservatives, Reform UK and so on, in the chamber.
There must be, you would imagine, a conversation going on with the palace at the moment. Of course, the King reads what he's instructed to read, and the Prime Minister will put that in front of him. But the palace does obviously get briefed by the Prime Minister on what is going on around in his party, and the King will be fully aware of just how difficult this is.
Yeah, he will, and those conversations, there is a back and forward of conversation and information there, and you're right, that you would expect those conversations to be taking place, the likes of which, the details of which we don't often get to hear, so they remain very confidential and very private, so we don't know what the nature of those conversations are, but you would imagine that they are taking place, because the King, when he gets up to speak in the House of Lords tomorrow, he will talk about his government bringing in these laws. He will talk about his government doing X, Y and Z at the same time as there is real uncertainty about the leadership of that government and real uncertainty about the future of it.
And are you being told about the sort of tenor of that speech and what it might contain in terms of policy? Is it going to be the sort of change delivery that the MPs are crying out for?
Well, don't forget the details of the speech haven't been written in the last 24 hours in response to this crisis. They've been banked for several days, if not weeks. So we know that there is going to be legislation around the European Union, around getting closer, particularly to the single market in certain areas. We know that there is not going to be a specific piece of legislation on welfare, for example. The government not ready to go back into that territory that precipitated that initial Labour rebellion in July 2024. So there will not be legislation on that, but this will not be a King's speech that is written in response to this crisis, and I think that could well make the Prime Minister's difficulties more entrenched.
Really interesting. Harry, do stay with us, because joining us is the political columnist and broadcaster Sonia Soda. Sonia, we're just thinking about the return of the MPs to Westminster tomorrow. They'll sit and listen to the King's speech, and then at some point into the near future they'll have to vote on the agenda. At some point, the 84 MPs, if that's the current tally we're at, will decide that they want to make a stand, and that's quite a sizable rebellion.
Yeah, if they choose to vote against the King's speech, then yes, but don't forget that that might be a legislative agenda that would be expected to stick if there were a new leader. So I don't think it's by any means a given that they would necessarily vote against it. It's just a really strange, unprecedented situation that we're in, because there's going to be huge rigmarole, pomp and circumstance tomorrow. The King will be in the House of Lords, as your correspondent just said, and he will essentially be reading out a speech on behalf of the government that is to set out the government's agenda. Yet there is all this kind of turmoil and chaos going on in the background. So MPs will be going through the motions of listening to the speech, But who knows if the Prime Minister is even going to be in place in a month's time? We just don't.
The former leader of the Scottish Labour Party and Secretary of State for Scotland, Jim Murphy's been on 5 Live. He's been on Matt Chorley's programme this afternoon. I'll just read you something of what he said, Sonia. He said, some of these people calling on the Prime Minister to go think they're in an episode of The West Wing or The House of Cards, and actually they're in danger of sounding like people from the thick of it. There's all sorts of insults flying around in different wings of the party at the moment. But if it were to be something like The West Wing or The House of Cards, what do you imagine is going on within Cabinet right now?
Yeah, it does. It does have the feel of a TV programme or some kind of political drama, doesn't it? I think what's going on is that people are trying to the issue is that people in the cabinet, including Keir Starmer himself, have got different versions of the scenario that they want to find themselves in 6 months' time. Keir Starmer, obviously, from what he said today, I think probably wants to cling on for as long as he possibly can. You've got some in the cabinet who would like to be able to back Andy Burnham to be the next Prime Minister, but he's not even in Parliament yet. And then there are others who would probably want to back a more moderate candidate like Wes Streeting. Then there are probably still some more in the cabinet who quite fancy a run at the leadership themselves. So I think what we're seeing is, we're supposed to have this concept of collective responsibility in the cabinet. The cabinet acts as one. They are the government of the United Kingdom. But at the moment, that's kind of broken down behind the scenes. And what we've got is different cabinet members, a prime minister, who've all got different ideal outcomes. And they're trying to work out the way to get to their ideal outcome, which is why, if you're a member of the public watching this, I think it just comes across as quite chaotic.
If you're Wes Streeting and you want to be Prime Minister, can you understand, Sonia, why he wouldn't go today? He's already being accused of a precipitous coup. Those on the soft left are pointing at the likes of Joe Morris, his PPS, who along with 2 other ministerial aides close to him, asked the Prime Minister to quit. There's a significant number of Streeting's allies on the backbenches who've sided with him and asked the Prime Minister to go. So he's already in that position, really, of wielding the knife. Why wouldn't he come out and say, right, this is what I've planned for, this is what I want?
So what we know as a result of briefing from people around him is that he's really reluctant to be the first mover, the first challenger, because I think his view is that when you do that, you're sort of seen as the person who's kind of responsible for stirring up trouble. However, Christian, as you say, I mean, we may be beyond that now because you've already got people from other wings of the party briefing against him. I thought it was just extraordinary that yesterday you had a soft left source saying, well, forget about getting Keir Starmer out of number 10. If Wes Streeting ends up in number 10 and Andy Burnham hasn't had a chance to go for it, we're going to be spending all of our time trying to get him out as well, which just really speaks to the level of division in the party. I think the problem is, and if you're a voter watching this, it will just seem completely absurd. But the problem is that collective responsibility has broken down. It's really chaotic, and people have got different views about where they want the party to go. And what someone like me would have liked to have seen is this all to have been worked out by senior MPs and the Prime Minister sitting down, working it out. If the Prime Minister's premiership is untenable, which I think it very much is at the moment, work out a timetable together, maybe have a think about what a unity leadership ticket would look like, and sort it out amongst yourselves. However, this is a political party, it's incredibly factionalised, and that is not what's going on. But I think what's the big problem is, when you take a step back from this, is that the public are very, very disillusioned with politics and political institutions at the moment, and they will just see what's going on and just think, gosh, are these the people in charge of us?
I think you're right. And I think they delivered that verdict last week. Sonia Soda, thank you very much indeed for that. Look, we'll take a short break. Harry Farley standing by with all the latest news, and there's plenty of it this afternoon around the world and across the UK. You're watching BBC News.
The Labour Party is in the mess that it is in, not because Keir Starmer is a bad person or because he is a weak leader, as people like to say. They don't have a plan. They never had the diagnosis for what went wrong with the United Kingdom.
What used to be the great hope of the oppressed in Britain, the Labour Party, Starmer's Labour has become the oppressor. This is why he's losing.
I've never heard from the Remain campaign, or nowadays from the Rejoin campaign, what UK can do for the EU. It was just rhetoric, just at the heart of the EU nonsense, which is completely meaningless.
Trump's mates are doing rather well as a result of the Iran war. So well that Trump may be convinced that their support may help him recover lost political ground even in the midterms coming up in November.
Iran has other ways of getting the oil through. We are seeing reports of Iran shipping oil actually through the blockade. Countries like Iran and Russia, they know this. They've been playing these games for a very long time.
The Iran war, in the end, was the Waterloo of Donald Trump. But in the medium run, his mates are doing pretty well out of it. Welcome to the Iconoclasts. On the week that began with Keir Starmer struggling to avoid becoming a former prime minister ever so quickly, on the same week that Donald Trump rejected Iran's latest peace offering, therefore extending his limbo war, during which the world of finance seems to have decoupled fully from the real economy, flying high while most people's economic circumstances have tanked. Well, on this week, Wolfgang and I seem to be spoiled for choice. So many orthodoxies to debunk, so little time. Hello, Wolfgang.
Hi, Yanis. Good morning. I will be talking today about Keir Starmer, but I agree there's so much happening. It's also, Vladimir Putin seems to have made overtures to a peace deal. I mean, this has been a very busy week, but I will be talking about Keir Starmer's peace deal with his own party, whether it's enough politically and whether his plan will work economically.
And I'm going to be talking about one of my own orthodoxies. I'm going to be debunking myself to some extent, because you will recall that in previous episodes, I've been arguing that Trump was winning everything until the Iran war began, until he started the Iran war, and that choice, if he ever made that choice, was detrimental to his political project, that after that, his political defeat would be given. Today, what I'm going to just take some chinks out of my own armor by arguing that if you look very carefully at the inner circle, the people that he considers to be his mates, that Trump considers to be his mates, well, they're doing really very well out of this Iran war. So, until later. Before we dive in, a quick heads up. Wolfgang and I are heading back to London for our second Iconoclasts live recording. We'll be at the brand new town hall in King's Cross, and our guest is none other than Hassan Piker.
That's Friday, June the 5th. So space is extremely tight, so don't wait and grab your tickets at unheard.com/Iconoclasts live.
This on the back of a phone is not a credit card. It's a tool designed for a very specific problem when you're in a conversation that actually matters, a meeting, an interview, a consultation, and you have to choose between paying attention or taking notes. Most people try to do both and end up doing neither particularly well. This is the Claude Note Pro answer. It conversations, transcribes them, and turns them into structured, actionable notes, organizing what was said, what matters, and how it fits together. You press a button and it works in the background, even for phone calls, without draining your battery or forcing you to stay on your screen. Afterward, it generates clear summaries and action points, so everything important is easy to review and share. So instead of trying to remember everything or taking notes in real time, you can stay fully present in the conversation and deal with the information afterwards. Questions like, what did we decide? Or who owns what? Don't come up in the same way because the conversation is already captured and structured. It can pick up conversations from up to 5 meters away and runs for 30 to 50 hours on a single charge. It also meets top global privacy standards, which is important when you're dealing with work conversations or anything that actually matters. The result is
economic policy proposals he made. One is the nationalization of British Steel. The other is putting the UK at the heart of the EU. And the third is a guaranteed job offer for young people leaving school. I may be sort of slightly out of consensus on pretty much all of these points here, because, I think there seems to be sort of a great excitement amongst UK political journalists that Starmer is finished. I'm not so sure about this. I mean, it's actually not that easy to get rid of him. The only candidate in the Labour Party who could unseat him, Andy Burnham, the mayor of Manchester, he doesn't have a seat, and Keir Starmer already prevented him from becoming a candidate for the Labour Party in a constituency race. He can keep on doing this. He has a majority in the party's National Executive Committee. It's not clear, what avenue Burnham has to actually be in a position to challenge Starmer, because he needs to be an MP in order to do that. The other people who may be launching,
your officers were being forced out. I am concerned that we have a distracted administration and a distracted department. From your written testimony, Mr. Secretary, it seems at times you're more passionate about fighting culture wars than winning the real war that we're in. At banning books, at cleaning alleged DEI off of websites, at taking on an anti-vaccine position rather than continuing the long-standing public health policies, at interfering with promotions. I'm stunned that you fired the 44-year Chief of Staff of the Army in the middle of a hot war and dismissed the Secretary of the Navy in the middle of a naval blockade. As dozens of senior flag rank officers have been dismissed, I am worried about what that does to focus and morale. We have a president who seems more focused on a billion-dollar ballroom and a victory arch rather than achieving actual victory, and a small piece of the $1.5 trillion request in front of us is for a new Trump class of battleships, a so-called Golden Fleet, which I think goes in the wrong direction. Let me come back to the basic point I was trying to make. The world of warfare is changing. Every major service can and should embrace smaller, lighter, faster, more distributed, lethal capabilities that will mostly be autonomous. This move towards a Golden Fleet, towards a new battleship, strikes me as moving in exactly the wrong direction, giving our adversaries a bigger target rather than a more capable platform. How do I explain to my constituents the cost of this war and the cost that we are looking together to invest in our national defense? I share the chairman's concerns about reconciliation. Last year, $150 billion was provided to the department, but the mismatch between base year and 1 year, between long-term and short-term, caused tens of billions of dollars in errors. Errors in how shipbuilding was handled, errors in how new munitions are being acquired. And working together on a bipartisan basis, we fixed many of those problems. This year's budget proposal triples that request to $350 billion. I agree with you about the urgency of our national defense. In your written testimony, you lay out 4 key goals: defend the homeland, deter China, increase burden sharing with our allies and partners, and supercharge the defense industrial base. As you've seen in the last Congress, I've worked with you and with Deputy Secretary Feinberg on multi-year munitions. I cheer the goal of finally passing an audit in 2028. I think we have critical investments to make in our defense industrial base. I think we are absolutely in the fight of our lives as a republic to win AI and quantum, space and surveillance, and the capacity to fight drones and launch drones. But I'm concerned that for a generation, the United States was largely distracted by open-ended wars of regime change and nation building. And as you summarize this administration's approach, we will not send America's best to advance foolhardy or reckless adventures halfway around the world. Mr. Secretary, I agree that the Iranian regime is a terrible regime. I am grateful for the service and the sacrifice of the Americans who've been wounded or who've lost their lives in this current conflict. But I do not understand the strategy. And as the average American is seeing the costs at the pump and at the grocery store, and as this committee is being asked to approve the largest single-year increase in defense spending in decades, I need to better understand the answers to the urgent questions I've put before you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Chairman McConnell,
I have plenty of questions. Go ahead.
okay, sir. I'll try to keep it short. Ranking Member Coons, other members of this committee, thank you for being here. I'm honored to be here alongside the Honorable Pete Hegseth and the Honorable Jay Hurst to talk about this year's President's budget. I'm grateful for the opportunity today to speak with you about the foundation of America's strength, our 2.8 million members of our joint force. And I'm continually inspired by the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, Guardians, and civilians standing the watch. They all could choose to do something different, but they choose to come serve our nation and do something more important than themselves. I would also like to highlight the 40 members of the Joint Force who've passed on from operations, combat, and training during my time as chairman, to include the 14 members who passed and were killed in action in Operation Epic Fury, and also highlight our most recent loss, First Lieutenant Key from Africa, who was out there, TDY. As chairman, my duties to ensure civilian leadership has a comprehensive range of military options and the associated risks required to make our nation's most difficult and complex decisions. I owe the President, the Secretary, and you, the Congress, the truth at every turn, and my blueprint for this role has always been General George C. Marshall. His firm commitment to civilian control, to a nonpartisan military, remains my constant standard. I strive to follow his example by working with you and providing clear and candid, strictly nonpartisan military advice, and to present this committee and my civilian leadership the clearest possible assessment of risk, readiness, and executability, and mindful today of the unclassified environment that we're in here. We are, as you said, Chairman and Ranking Member, operating in a delicate and dangerous times. Global risk is scaling, and the complexity of the modern battlefield demands constant adaptation and innovation. Your joint force is operational at its core, purpose-built for the realities of a complex world. We're organized, trained, and equipped to execute the most demanding missions across the globe with unrivaled precision, as demonstrated by the actions and activities over this past year. We are the most professional military on earth, and we're able to do these things because of the deep, enduring reservoir of training, professionalism, and commitment. Our operational tempo is high, but we're designed to sustain it and rebuild quickly, but we need to rebuild faster. We build readiness every day, we train professionals every day, and we learn to sharpen our edge every day. And we build continually on emerging technologies, as the ranking member said, like AI, quantum, and others, and advance every day, led by great people in our joint force, like Commander Gary Wald, or Wald, G, as we call him, who's out there working every day on our joint staff. Driving this pace of change requires timely, predictable capital and sustained investment, and I look forward to discussing it today. The President's budget supports the Department's goal of recharging the defense industrial base and the national industrial base, those small mom and pop manufacturing companies that are out there in your districts that help us generate combat capability and combat capacity to ensure that we're globally integrated, properly armed and ready when and if our nation calls on us, while always taking care of our most important treasure, and that's our people. I'm deeply humbled today to be joined by the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman, Fleet Master Chief Dave Isom, who represents the 1.8 million members of our enlisted joint force. They are the special sauce of America's military. We face dynamic and dangerous times, but I have incredible trust and confidence in the Joint Force today. I'm deeply grateful for those deployed members of the Joint Force that are out there right now doing our nation's work, and I remain humbled by the gift of the ultimate sacrifice that those fallen have given us, not just for the 40 during my time in this job, but across the history of our great nation, and their families who continue to soldier on. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of President Trump's historic $1.5 trillion 2027 budget for the Department of War. The President's budget request reflects the urgency of the moment addressing both the deferred maintenance of longstanding problems as well as positioning our forces for current and future fights. I'm honored to be joined alongside the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Jay Hurst.
The Iranian American community is against this illegal war, and if you accept and if you approve this budget, you will complicit in the war crime of this administration.
If I may interject, I ask that we have order in the hearing room so we can proceed. I ask the witnesses suspend until the room is cleared. It appears it's cleared. Go ahead, Ms. Secretary.
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking this committee and Congress for your partnership in securing the investments needed to maintain the most powerful military in the world. Our nation's ability to build, to innovate, and support the critical needs of warfighters at speed and at scale is the foundation upon which our survival rests. When President Trump took office, he inherited a defense industrial base that had been hollowed out by years of America Last policies, resulting in a diminished capacity to project strength, offshoring, outsourcing, cost overruns, and degraded capabilities. Under the leadership of President Trump, a builder-in-chief, we are reversing this systemic decay and putting our defense industrial base back on a wartime footing. Urgency informs everything that we do. We're rebuilding the military that the American people can be proud of, one that instills nothing less than unrelenting fear in our adversaries and confidence in our allies. We fight to win in every scenario, to include ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon. The $1.5 trillion FY27 budget put forward by the President will build upon the historic $1 trillion FY26 top line and will continue to reverse 4 years of underinvestment and mismanagement of the Biden administration. The $1.5 trillion budget will ensure that the United States continues to maintain the most capable military in the most complex of environments. Not to mention, however, that this budget also includes a historic troop pay increase, 7%, that builds on the pay increases that Congress has given in previous years. And the budget eliminates all poor or failing barracks. Quality of life for our troops is front and center in this budget. By supercharging our industrial capacity and transforming how the department does business, we are restoring American commercial dominance.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want, and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and
to an outcome-driven organization focused on delivering the most for taxpayers. Over the past year, through historic multi-year procurement agreements, smart business deals, we have sent an unambiguous demand signal to our industry partners, large and small, to build more and build faster. The result has been a surge, a revitalization of our great American factories and a massive reinvestment in the skilled American workers who serve as the industrial muscle behind our warriors. I'll provide a brief overview of what's been accomplished on that front in just a few months. These are announced new facilities and investments in support of American warfighters. The department has helped stimulate more than 250 private investment deals in 39 states and 180 cities in 150 companies, not just the big primes, worth more than $50 billion. This has resulted in 280 new or expanded facilities and more than 18 million new square feet of American manufacturing, 70,000 new jobs. These $50 billion in investments in new plants, new assembly lines, and new factories are private investments, not taxpayer dollars. By completely transforming our department's business model, American companies, private companies, are investing in their own factories with their own money, a historic demonstration of American manufacturing and defense revitalization, all with their capital, not Uncle Sam's. This has not been done before and is long overdue. It's from a bureaucratic model to a business model. These investments equal great things for American families and American workers and help ensure that we can defend the American dream, all American made. Together with the help of this Congress, we're turning the lights back on the arsenal of freedom. We're firing up the American economic engine at every level of our defense industrial base. Every policy we pursue, every budgetary item we request serves to ensure that this department remains laser-focused on increasing the lethality and survivability of our fighting forces from the front lines to the factory floor. We truly believe this is a historic budget, and at every level, we have made it a fiscally responsible budget. This is also a warfighting budget. Under President Trump, we are restoring the unbreakable might of American manufacturing, which has to underwrite everything. We're providing for our warfighters, and we are putting the people and interests of this country first. May Almighty God continue to watch over our troops, and may we honor the legacy of those brave Americans that we've lost. That is our sacred mission, and that's what we'll continue to execute on. Thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I know we all understand you're going with the president to China. We all agree they're the greatest long-term military and economic challenge to U.S. and our Western allies as well. Of course, Taiwan, Japan, and Philippines look to us. So can you reassure the countries out there in the Pacific that their security will not be on the table during the talks in Beijing? Is our strategy to preserve American primacy or simply to accommodate China's rise? And can you speak to our commitment to preserving freedom of navigation in places like the South China Sea?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I would never purport to speak on behalf of the president or what he will say or how he'll approach these talks, but having an opportunity to watch him work, every aspect of what he pursues inside this relationship is to ensure that American interests are advanced. And our department, underneath that, we've worked very hard in that region, in the Indo-Pacific, with Japan, with the Philippines, and others, to make that a priority, to ensure that America's security is amplified by burden sharing of partners who recognize the shared threats that we face and are willing to invest alongside us. And some of those things are known to the public. Some of those things are not known to the public. But since the beginning of my time in this job, we've focused in that area of operations to ensure that Admiral Paparo has every option available to include with partners to create all the dilemmas necessary to give America every advantage possible, whether it's freedom of navigation, access basic and overflight, and ultimately put the president in a position where he's going into Beijing in a position of strength, which he will be.
So would you be a little more specific about navigation, particularly in the South China Sea?
I think what you've seen from this administration is a commitment to freedom of navigation. Take, for example, the BAM and the Houthis, which under the Biden administration, they allowed American ships to get shot at without consequence. And President Trump undertook that mission, Operation Rough Rider, for 50 days, and the Houthis stopped shooting at our ships. It wasn't a nation-building exercise. It was an advancing of freedom of navigation and our would pertain to any waterway in the South China Sea. American ships should sail freely, so should others in the international maritime sphere.
Army Secretary Driscoll has described Ukraine as the Silicon Valley of warfare, as I suggested earlier. I think we'll agree on that. And the outcome of the war really matters to American interests. Is there a policy preventing senior department officials from traveling to Ukraine? Do you support or oppose senior officials traveling there?
Senator, we've had many senior officials travel there, and we learn a great deal. In fact, I've personally approved additional personnel there to learn from that drone battlefield, both on offense and defense, to ensure that we're learning every possible lesson from that conflict and incorporating it in real time into how we defend and we go on offense in an era where drone dominance is required. And that's why this budget spends so much on drone dominance. Take the lessons learned from Ukraine and other battlefields and ensure we're applying them throughout the fighting force as quickly as possible.
Well, you know, I think what's not in dispute is that NATO is the most important military alliance in world history. Nobody's ever pulled something together like this and held it together to prevent the worst for a longer period of time. Basically, it seems to me that a lot of the European countries think that we're reducing our influence there, that they're sort of on their own, and somehow American leadership is not essential to NATO going forward. I would argue that it's certainly essential for us to continue to be the leader, and it's important to note the other countries that are looking to NATO, our allies in the Pacific, helping Ukraine, interested in coming to NATO meetings, anxious for America to continue to defend the free world, not just in NATO, but worldwide. It's a big job, and they're looking to us. There's nobody else who can do that. So what is the department's concise vision for the role of our allies and partners in defending America's global interests?
Senator, our vision is to have real, capable allies and partners. I think that's what we saw. So flags are not the goal. The number of flags involved in an operation are not the goal. The goal is the number of capable formations who can actually fight alongside the American fighting man and woman. So it's not just us all the time. I saw that in Iraq. I saw that in Afghanistan. Our generation has experienced that. No administration has done more to ensure that our allies and partners realize they need to step up so that we can amplify our capabilities. That's what burden sharing is all about. It's not just we carry the burden for other countries. It's other countries are capable of coming alongside us as well.
But I also think Putin's invasion of Ukraine helped get their attention that they need to step up as well. And the president's been very clear about that. So they are headed in the right direction. What I'm worried about is which direction we headed in.
I think it's very encouraging that European countries have stepped up to ensure that Ukraine can defend itself. I think that's a very good development.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Secretary, in January, President Trump signed the fiscal year 26 defense appropriations bill. It provided $400 million specifically to aid Ukraine in their fight against Russia. This is at a time when our European allies and partners have stepped up to take on the overwhelming majority of the cost of any munitions or support for Ukraine. So far, your department has not spent a dime of that $400 million, despite repeated follow-up requests from the chairman and myself. In a call just last week, your staff indicated we will see a spend plan for those funds this week. Will you commit to spending those $400 million for weapons for Ukraine, and when will we receive your department's spend plan?
I appreciate that question. The $400 million for European capacity building has been released from the Secretary of War's office, and we'll work with EUCOM to make sure they spend it accordingly and properly, which we have all faith that they will.
Mr. Secretary, when will this subcommittee get the associated spend plan for the $400 million?
Yeah, I mean, we will work with your committee to make sure that the spend plan as allocated, I want to make sure EUCOM is fully informed in how they want to spend this. They're the closest to the problem set. And so working with them to ensure that you have the spend plan, we'll work with you.
Mr. Secretary, thank you, but it's May, and this has been the law since January, and you or your representatives have been asked this repeatedly on a bipartisan basis by members of this committee And I think dragging our feet on this small investment in Ukraine's defense sends exactly the wrong signal to Putin at a time when the contest for freedom has its front lines in Ukraine. As you said, Europe has stepped up, donating billions to buy U.S. weapons to send to Ukraine to help them as they continue to take ground on the battlefield. But it seems not all the money donated by our European allies is going to buy new weapons for Ukraine, as they had understood. The memo you released just last week, prior to your testimony at Senate Armed Services, indicated DoD has and will continue to divert some of these funds back into DoD accounts for our own use. Will you commit, Mr. Secretary, to spend every dollar donated by our European allies for Ukraine on new weapons and capabilities for Ukraine?
The Pearl Initiative, which you're referring to, which is instituted underneath this administration so that European countries are paying for American equipment to provide as they see fit. NATO allocates where it would like to allocate that. It can choose Ukraine if it'd like. That money, when it's paid for, that's where it goes. It goes to those efforts.
Well, look, as the chairman raised, and as I will repeat, I view NATO as the most successful mutual defense relationship we've ever had. And your comment about we need not flags, but real and capable allies, and the foot dragging on both Pearl and the investments in our Baltic allies and Ukraine causes me real concern. As you know, a bipartisan group of us from the Senate and the House went to Denmark to lay a wreath at the memorial to the 52 Danes who served, fought, and died alongside our troops in Afghanistan. Those were not just flags. Those were real warfighters who fought and died at our request in a war that began by NATO's initiation, a service and sacrifice in Afghanistan. I just think we're sending the wrong signal by the president's announcement of the intention to withdraw 5,000 troops from Germany. Could you help me understand what is the strategic reason for a drawdown of U.S. troops from Western Europe?
I would just like to clarify, Senator, it's never about the heroism of foreign troops. I fought alongside great British and European and Australian allies in Afghanistan. It's the political caveats and the limitations that they come with. It's not the troops. It's the capitals of those militaries that limit what they're able to do, where they're able to go, who they're able to fight, that create limits on our own. And anybody that's been in these formations knows that. So it's easy to talk about here. It's another thing to apply. And we need allies that are burden sharing, not becoming a burden with political limitations. I'm not talking about the troops.
Thank you. Our president said in Europe that we never asked for and never received anything from our NATO allies. Was that your experience in Afghanistan, serving and fighting alongside our NATO allies?
I've written extensively about that, and the vast majority of my experience was frustration with the limits of what those troops were able to do because of the political caveats, rules of engagement, and limits that came from their capitals.
But you don't doubt our question that about a third of all the combat casualties in our war in Afghanistan were our NATO partners and allies.
I would have to go back and check that number, but I take your word for it.
Let me just assert that hundreds and hundreds of service members from, as you put it, Australia and the United Kingdom, as well as many other of our allies, served, fought, and died alongside us. So I'm just going to simply say, in terms of our reliance on our partnerships, I'll agree with the chairman that at a moment when Russia and China, North Korea and Iran are coming closer together and delivering a bedeviling lethality in this ongoing war in Iran, for which we don't have a clear strategy or clear answers, our better strategy would be to partner more closely with Ukraine, dig in deeper with our real values-based allies, our treaty allies in the Western Pacific and in Europe, and together find a path out of this, rather than berating them and bullying them for not coming along in a war they were not consulted about or briefed on before it began. I look forward to a second round. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Kane, when the Department of War was planning its operations in Iran, did you anticipate the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the resulting impact on oil supplies for many countries, including here in the United States, where we've seen gas, diesel, and home heating oil prices go up? I ask this question because There's historic precedent, obviously, during the Iraq-Iran war. Tankers were fired upon in the Strait.
Senator, thanks for the question. As always, we have an incredible staff over at the Pentagon and down at USCENTCOM. And we always look at the range of military branches and sequels. I won't comment on any particular one because that gets to whatever advice I may or may not have given to the president. And I do that in private, but you should rest assured, as should the American people, that we cover and consider the full range of things all the time in our careful consideration of military actions and the advice and or options that we present to our civilian leaders.
It seems to me that there's been a different plan almost daily with dealing with this problem, which is why I ask. Mr. Secretary, let me start.
Go from scattered tasks to one list you can manage from Gmail, chat, and calendar. A more organized workflow in just a few clicks. Hit every deadline on time with Google Workspace.
Encouragement and praise. The Aegis destroyers play such a critical role in our national security, from intercepting Iranian missiles to supporting combat operations around the globe. While visiting Bath Iron Works, you correctly described the DDG destroyers as the workhorse of the fleet and emphasized maxing out on DDGs sends a message to the world. I was also delighted that you noted that Bath built is best built, a slogan of which we're very proud. I fully agree with all those sentiments. That's why I was alarmed to see that this year's budget request only includes funding for just one DDG 51. That's down from 2 in FY26 and 3 in FY25. That reduction to a single DDG 51 creates uncertainty for U.S. surface combatant industrial base at a time when BIW is demonstrating huge progress in workforce retention, production stability, and faster throughput. So there needs to be a steady demand signal for DDGs in order to keep the yard operating at all phases, from cutting the initial steel to completing the ship. So I'm puzzled by why only one DDG is requested and concerned about what that will mean as far as maintaining that workflow. I'm particularly puzzled by the decision in reconciliation to request $1.8 billion for foreign-born surface combatants at the same time that there's the proposed cut for American-built destroyers. When providing a demand signal for U.S.-built DDGs from the department help the industry further increase the speed at which these ships are being produced? And I'm sure when you were at Bath, they probably showed you the chart of the enormous progress that they are making.
I appreciate the question, Senator, and it was a great visit, and it's incredible what they do. To both your questions, the answer is shipbuilding capacity. And that's why we invest, $65 billion in shipbuilding in our shipyards, is because the reason for a request of that number is the ability to build them and how quickly. And so as soon as that capacity is increased, which we anticipate this investment will do, then we look forward to ordering DDGs into the future, because they are the backbone of our naval fleet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ervin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I associate myself with the remarks of Senator Coons earlier about the $400 million for Ukraine, and I hope that it is allocated quickly. I'd like to ask a similar question about the $200 million in that same appropriation bill that was designated for the Baltic Security Initiative. Has that money been released?
If it has not been, it should be. I don't know. Has it been released?
Senator, so I believe there was a mistake with how the appropriations bill was written. We're trying to rectify that through a reprogramming action to make sure we have sufficient funds in the DSCA account to execute BSI.
It's 5 months after that bill was signed into law. How long will this take?
I think it's contingent on the reprogramming action being approved by the committees of jurisdiction of the Department of War.
So you're suggesting he has to go back through Congress for the current appropriation?
I need to move money between DSCA accounts to execute BSI. That's
well,
right.
I can tell you, I would like to work with you to dispatch that money. It is needed for the Baltics and Poland and needed on a timely basis. To reflect on the war in Iran, which you, Mr. Hurst, testified before Congress, has cost us $25 billion, 14 U.S. military personnel tragically killed, and a tenuous ceasefire in place. As I look at the achievements, Iran to date, led now by an even more extreme supreme leader, the global economy is held hostage to the standoff in the Straits of Hormuz. Our munitions stockpiles are dangerously depleted, and Iran is no further from a nuclear weapon than before our invasion. General Kane, the president has claimed on several occasions over the past couple of months that the war is over, that the conflict has been concluded. What were the goals of the U.S. conflict in Iran, and have we achieved them?
Well, sir, I'm going to be mindful of my need to maintain trust with a variety of stakeholders in the job that I'm in, which includes you, the American people, the Joint Force, and the President. And to that point, only our political and civilian leaders set the national military objectives. Our military objectives have been clear the whole time around targeting Iran's ballistic missile systems, preventing them from threatening U.S. forces in the region, destroying the Iranian Navy, degrading its capacity and capability, and ensuring that they can't rebuild by focusing on their defense industrial base. I'll defer to the Secretary and the President on other strategic objectives, but that's what we've been focused on, sir.
Do you feel that the situation in the Straits of Hormuz indicate a victory on our side?
Sir, only political leaders decide victory or defeat, and that I'll leave it to them to opine on that. They are the ones who invoke or stop the use of military force.
Well, then let me put it in strictly military terms. Can you explain to the American people who are facing these gasoline and diesel oil prices what is going on in the Straits of Hormuz, where Iran, which was attacked by us, seemingly as the Straits of Hormuz at a standstill, with 1,500 tankers waiting for either permission or peaceful circumstances to navigate?
So I think militarily, it's a case where Iran is choosing to hold the world's economy hostage through their use of military power across their southern flank. And so I would encourage Iran to reconsider that. And I would encourage those allies and partners who have an opportunity to come assist with that tactical problem to do so.
Could you explain to the American people why, with the vast investment we've made in national defense and military, how Iran, after they've been attacked by us, is still capable of stopping the trend?
Well, sure, it's a complex situation out there with a lot of different small boats that are out there and other capabilities. Some of this is on the commercial traffickers. Some of this is on, again, back to the main problem, and that's Iran holding the global economy hostage through the Straits. I would encourage them to think wisely about their next moves and to take the opportunity to open the Straits. They have that choice to make.
They certainly do. I guess the question in my mind is, as we talk about trillion-dollar-plus budgets for our military, it appears that a very small budget is holding us hostage in the Straits of Hormuz. Yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I just want to start off with saying that
These military operations against Iran have been spectacular. In a matter of months, we have degraded the largest state sponsor of terrorism beyond what I thought was possible, probably more to come. Ms. Secretary, 900 pounds of 60% enriched uranium.
Did you know that Google has a phone plan? And it's not just a phone plan. Google Fi Wireless is also a tablet, smartwatch, laptop plan. You can connect all those to your plan at no extra cost. I know you love those freebie bonuses. Plus, you'll get industry-leading Google security and perks like VPN and advanced spam call blocking. All of that's included in your plan. So switch to Google Fi.
% highly enriched uranium without them cheating in the past?
We know in every context of what Iran has undertaken, they've lied and cheated.
The answer is no. Everything that Obama and Biden did was designed to keep it to a civilian nuclear program. There is no way in hell they can have 60% highly enriched uranium unless they cheat. So everything y'all did failed. And you want to criticize? You failed. You allowed Iran to be a threshold nuclear nation. Everything you did failed. Missiles, Diego Garcia. Did they shoot missiles at Diego Garcia, General Kane, the Iranians?
Yes, sir, they shot a few.
Under the protocols we had in place, were they supposed to be able to do that?
Without reviewing the fine print, I believe the answer is no.
No, they weren't. You failed there. You failed to stop Iran from being a nuclear threshold nation. You failed to stop Iran from having missiles that could go thousands of miles. Why should we listen to you? Bottom line here, China. Does China buy 90% of Iranian oil, Ms. Secretary?
China buys a very large percentage of
Okay,
Iranian oil.
90% is pretty large. So does China buy, are they the largest purchaser of Russian oil and gas?
I would imagine they're up there, Senator.
They are. They're the largest. So President Trump, when you go to China, realize that the person you're talking to is propping up Russia and Iran. I appreciate what you've done in Iran. I appreciate what you're trying to do to end the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Do you agree with me, Mr. Secretary, that of all the countries on the planet, China could have the most influence of ending this war if they chose to?
I think the most influence is in President Trump's hands and what he decides to do, and he'll set the terms
what
of how
if
this.
China stopped
But
buying?
ultimately, China has a lot of leverage. You're right.
Yeah, they did. What if they stopped buying 90% of oil from Iran? That's not President Trump. That's up to China. Do you support putting tariffs on China if they continue to buy Russian oil and gas?
Tariffs is not my lane, but anything we can do to put pressure on people, I usually support.
Well, do you believe that when we put pressure on India by a 25% tariff for buying Russian oil, they kind of backed off?
I would say I've had a front row seat to the efficacy of tariff policy, yes.
Yeah, I think it works, guys, and we're on the breakout here in a minute of having a bill that would give the president ability to tariff the largest of Russian oil and gas. And I hope he will use. I just understand are allowing their bases to be used to park Iranian aircraft.
Sir, I've seen one report on that.
Well, is it accurate?
Sir, I think based on the variety of classification matters.
Let me just say, do you agree if it is accurate, that is sort of inconsistent with it being a peace mediator?
Sir, I wouldn't want to comment on that based on the ongoing negotiations in Pakistan's role.
Secretary Hexeth, if the mediator is allowing reconnaissance aircraft of Iran to be parked in Pakistani air bases, do you think that's consistent with being a fair mediator?
I wouldn't want to get in the middle of these negotiations. I want maximum efficacy.
I want to get in the middle of these negotiations. I don't trust Pakistan as far as I can throw them. If they actually do have Iranian aircraft parked in Pakistan bases to protect Iranian military assets, that tells me we should be looking maybe for somebody else to mediate. No wonder this damn thing is going nowhere. So, you know, I appreciate all you've done. I'm very supportive of it. But when it comes to Pakistan and China, enough already. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. Mr. Secretary, we have been trying to track down the expenditures in the Operation Epic Fury and Operation Freedom now. And we've sent letters, and we've got very few responses. We've been sending letters since March 10th. We did understand that there was a release that in the first 6 days, $11.3 billion was spent. And then recently, we were told $25 billion was spent. Today, I think the number is $29 billion. Can you provide some details as to what consists of that $29 billion? Have we counted everything?
Yeah, Senator Reid. So I testified this morning to HACD that between the Joint Staff and the Comptroller staff, our operational cost estimate is now $29 billion. A lot of that increase comes from having a refined estimate on repair or replacement costs for equipment. Our munitions costs are fairly fixed. We think they're very accurate, and there's some O&M costs there as well. We're not making an estimate for MILCON at this time. We don't know what our future posture is going to be. We don't know how those bases would be reconstructed, and we don't know what percentage our allies and partners will pay for that reconstruction.
So you do not consider installations that have been damaged in the conflict, correct?
We just don't have a good estimate at this time.
So it's not in the $29 billion?
That's correct.
Expended weapons, are they totally included within the estimate?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, we have a full count of the expended weapons.
And weapons transferred to other countries in the region, are they counted in?
I would want to double check to make sure we have that accurately.
Please. I mean, you're coming up and asking for another significant supplemental, et cetera, and before we can, I think, reasonably appropriate additional money, we have to find out how the existing appropriated dollars have been spent. So that's critically important. And I know also that the budget asked for another $350 billion in reconciliation. How essential is that to your budget?
I would say it's extremely essential to achieve the generational investment that the president is trying to make.
But that would be on top of the $150 billion we received in the big, beautiful bill, which would be $500 billion, half $1 trillion in 2 years. And again, we're not getting, I think, the detailed spend plan, the detailed obligation plan for this. And without it, it's very difficult to say, just take the money and run. You know, we have a job to do too. Any comments, Mr. Secretary?
We recognize that, and our you know, in a perfect world, everything's part of your regular order. This is a dynamic place with a lot of dynamic factors, and so in order to get where we need to with the historic investment for this department, we think this is the best allocation in order to get there, Senator.
Well, I think detailed analysis, detailed data that we receive will help us make more sensible judgments. And, you know, we're just sort of vague generalities are not helping this committee make critical judgments. And the trade-offs are significant. Deficit is increasing dramatically. We have to be conscious of that. We also have to be conscious to helping American families just get by, and inflation just hit 3.8% today, which is I think the biggest numbers is 2023 or something. So we're fighting all these forces that are not directly connected to your mission, Mr. Secretary, but they are connected to our mission. General Kane, your observations on the future course of action in the Persian Gulf. We're in this tenuous ceasefire. What's your sense of the direction forward?
You is that we retain and continue to hold a range of options for our civilian leaders. It would be inappropriate for me to opine on how it may go, but rest assured we still hold many, many options.
Have you been surprised by the resistance of the Iranians?
Sir, as a warfighter, I always assume an enemy's going to resist. And the job of the joint force is to win at the time and place of our nation's choosing. So I always assume an enemy's going to fight, and I find that's the best pathway.
I think so too, and you communicated that to the President as you advised him before the decision was made?
Sir, as I've said respectfully before, I won't comment on my private conversations with the President in order to make sure that I maintain trust with him and with you and the American people and the joint force.
That's a principled response. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Moran.
Chairman, thank you. Secretary Hegseth, welcome. I just returned Friday from a visit to China. And one of the things that is seemingly clear to me is that Taiwan remains at the forefront of the Chinese efforts, next steps in what they want to accomplish. We have commitments, I guess, to defend Taiwan. You can explain that to me as you choose. What I would like to highlight is while Taiwan is still at the forefront, at least in the minds of the Chinese, the United States is seeing the Russian invasion of Ukraine, in which we're yet to some degree still involved. We're having deterrence in the Indo-Pacific in regard to China. We're conducting operations in the Middle East. All of that has drawn strategic capabilities from the joint force. One of the things I think we can do to augment our joint force is strong allied relationships, partnerships with others. Given the current threat environment that we are in and the scale of the global demands upon the United States, can you speak to how the department views the role of allies and partners in sustaining our global posture? And does the defense budget recognize, reflect the needs to strengthen allied integration and maintain credible unified deterrence?
Senator, I appreciate the question, and I think foundational to it is a recognition that countries closest to the problem set should be most invested in ensuring that they can deter that adversary, which is why we want European capabilities to increase to deter Russian aggression. When you look at the Indo-Pacific, it's been a focus of our department since the day I showed up, whether it's ASEAN or Shangri-La or traveling to the region, going to South Korea, going to Japan, going to the Philippines, having them to our building to build out those relationships in a very real operational way. It's not about what we can sign. It's about what contingencies and dilemmas can we create for adversaries who may seek to expand their sphere of influence, whether it's militarily or economically or through pressure. And so I think while we've been involved in a lot of efforts around the world, through the President's leadership, we've reestablished deterrence. The world knows that America's word means something, from Maduro to the Houthis to Midnight Hammer to Epic Fury. When the President says you can't have a nuclear weapon, he means it. When the President says you're an indicted individual, he means it. Everybody sees that, including in the Indo-Pacific. And when you do that, plus build out your alliances, not based on talk, but based on capabilities, access, spacing, and overflight, training, interoperability in discrete ways, I think all the right people pay attention to that and see it, and that's been the focus in the Indo-Pacific for us for a while.
And the budget request reflects those circumstance that you just described.
Very much so. I would say Admiral Poparo, his request, his line items, his input was front and center in the build of FY27 to ensure allies and partners are considered. Yes, sir.
Secretary Hegseth, let me change the topic. I worked closely with Senator Cruz to introduce and secure the unanimous Senate passage of the Rotor Act. That was an airplane that originated from Kansas that saw the death of 67 people near Reagan Airport. The department in December the 17th, released a statement in support of the Rotor Act. And yet, when the House considered the Rotor Act, the department released an additional statement and claimed that enactment would create significant unresolved budgetary burdens and operational security risks affecting national defense activities. Can you explain what happened between the first statement and the second statement that caused there to be a different reaction? And I ask this because it's still very important to me that the Rotor Act or something very similar to the Rotor Act is enacted into law. And apparently for it to be passed, it needs to be something that the Department of Defense is supportive of. So what is it that changed between the initial statement, the second statement, so that we can bring this legislative endeavor to fruition?
Well, I appreciate your attention to what occurred there. We've taken it seriously from the beginning. We recognize the need for the requisite oversight. It was an earnest change. The department didn't think that the changes that we had asked for were incorporated properly into the bill, and as a result, we came out and opposed it. But we look forward to an iteration of that bill to get passed because we think it's important that it happen.
If I can paraphrase in my words so I understand what you're telling me, it isn't that something changed, it was that what you asked for didn't get enacted in the Rotor Act before it passed the Senate?
Correct. We think some changes that need to be made were not made to the bill, and as a result, we changed our position, but we look forward to supporting something in the future. Yes.
In my 15 seconds left, General Kane, could I ask you to visit with me momentarily after the hearing so that I can raise a topic with you and have you point me in the direction of where I can find an answer?
Of course, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, the war in Iran has not only cost 13 American service member lives, it is also costing American taxpayers dearly. Tens of billions of dollars and counting, and that's money that could be helping people perhaps get health care. But instead, we're paying for bombs dropped in a war that American people overwhelmingly oppose. Now, earlier this morning, I know that your team testified Trump's war with Iran cost $29 billion so far. That is $29 billion blown on a war of choice, and that's what it would have cost, actually, to save the ACA tax credits. But as my colleagues have already stated, what is concerning as well is it seems quite clear that that cost estimate is suspiciously low. Now, your acting comptroller suggested that damage to U.S. facilities was not factored into that figure. It is clear that there has been extensive damage to American military assets. New reporting from the Washington Post and others indicates that Iran has hit at least 228 structures or pieces of equipment at U.S. military sites. Can you tell us what the cost of damage done to U.S. facilities is because of this war?
Well, I think Jay covered pretty clearly what we can or cannot share, but I would simply respond that, and I think it's an important point, considering what the president is undertaking, is what is the cost of Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon? And the fact that this president's been willing to make a historic and courageous choice to confront that, it comes with cost, and we recognize that.
I understand what your judgment
that,
is. We have a judgment as well, and I'm asking if you can tell us, and at what point you can tell us what the cost of damage done to U.S. facilities is because of this war.
Yeah, ma'am, thanks for the question. So for future posture in the Middle East, we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know how we're going to design these bases.
The damage to date, you do not have any cost estimate on it at all.
For the military construction, I don't have a cost estimate to provide you at this time.
Well, when will we get that?
Again, it depends on what the future posture is, how we decide to construct those bases.
To date, you know what has happened to date. We can't get that number, and that is a real concern to us. Our job is...
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform made for anyone with an idea and a drive to bring it to life. Describe what you want and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems. Everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world of creation where you can go as far as your imagination takes you. Can you imagine it? Let's make your dream a reality right now.
That absurd request, but in insisting that the American people get the actual answers on how much money, their money, we are spending on this. Now, let me turn and say, Secretary Hegseth, the president has called Medicaid, Medicare, and child care little scams and said, quote, we're fighting wars, we cannot take care of daycare. I'm just trying to understand that. Is it your position, since you're asking taxpayers for another $500 billion for the war, that American families should be forced to give up child care and health coverage so that you can have $1.5 trillion for this budget?
Senator, that's not my department. I certainly support this, and I also support the president's efforts to find and remove fraud wherever possible in a general sense.
I'm not talking
and we
about
do that in
fraud.
our department as well.
I'm
at every step.
not talking about fraud. I actually asked whether an American family should lose their health care or their child care to pay for this budget. That is literally what the president suggested.
The president has proposed a historic $1.5 trillion budget that will defend the nation and confront threats like Iran, which previous presidents allowed to happen, as Senator Graham pointed out.
Well,
previous administrations said they wanted to take care of this problem, and they did not, and he's doing it.
The question in front of this committee, the question in front of the American people is, what are they being asked to give up for this $1.5 trillion? That's where I was talking about. And lastly, Mr. Secretary, your budget request cuts through Trump's ramblings and really, to me, makes the truth clear that you and the president don't value families as much as you value defense contractors. You want to increase the war budget.
I mean,
Let me
every
finish.
family at Dover. Okay, don't tell me we don't care about families. We sure do.
Mr.
And we
Secretary-
take care of them in every way we possibly can.
I'm asking you about taxpayer dollars that everybody has. So when we've been to war before, we have asked people to do victory gardens. We've asked them to pay more. You are not doing that. You are asking for $1.5 trillion, which means something else has to be given up. That is what this committee is looking at. You want to increase the war budget for the next year by $500 billion. That is taxpayer money that could be used to feed families or build new affordable homes or wipe out some diseases completely or increase child investments 20 times over. But you are asking us to blow it all on war, and that's not even counting the money that you have spent bombing Iran or that you may still request in a separate supplemental. And to me, this budget wasn't even strategically crafted. $1.5 trillion is like the president decided that was the number and you all filled in the blanks. So what I'm here today to say is you asked for a massive laundry list of unnecessary spending. It's a huge payday for defense contractors, and you still don't even ask to give DOD civilian workers a pay raise. And to me, this is absurd. I know you do not care what I have to say. So let me quote you someone you might actually listen to. President Eisenhower. He said, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children." That is what this budget proposal is asking. It's going to leave Americans cold and hungry to fund Trump's war and make defense contractors a fortune. So that is why I hope this committee throws that in the trash and comes together with a budget that works for all American families. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hoeven.
First, I want to thank you, gentlemen, and all of our men and women in uniform for the incredible defense of our nation, what we're seeing really around the globe, and certainly in the Gulf right now. The professionalism, the capability of our men and women in uniform is frankly beyond belief. It's just amazing. And we need to say thank you to those men and women and their families every single day. It's really something. My first question is, Mr. Secretary in General, is there a way to secure the Strait of Hormuz before we fully resolve with the conflict with Iran?
Well, thank you for your statement up front about the troops, and we certainly feel the same way. They're the best of America and deserve the best from all of us. As it pertains to, I actually didn't get a chance to reply to Senator Durbin, who said that Iran was attacked by us. I would take issue with that. For 47 years, we've been attacked by Iran, and they've been lying to pursue a nuclear weapon, and President Trump had the courage to do something about it. I don't think enough has been stated about the blockade and the power of the blockade and the dilemma that our blockade creates for them. They can't move anything out of Iranian ports, and over, I think it's 65 ships at this point have been turned around or disabled. The economic pressure that creates on them greatly outstrips the pressure on us, And we don't use the Strait of Hormuz anywhere near as much as the rest of the world does, or certainly they do. And I think it creates a lot of dynamics for future energy dominance for the United States of America, considering the increased capability that our country has, not to mention opportunities in Venezuela. So we have a range of options, as the chairman and I have discussed extensively, mostly privately, but some in public, to ensure that transit were to continue, should the president or others want us to go in that direction. But ultimately, we control the strait. Because nothing's going in that we don't allow to go in. And trust me, when we look at what Iran's thinking about that, they know they can't break it, and it's very concerning for them.
Iran only responds to strength and force. And that's specifically why I asked the question, in that their evil regime, can make their people suffer and hang in there. But if we can keep the pressure on with the naval blockade and navigate the Strait of Hormuz, we can keep the stranglehold on this evil regime and force the type of solution that we need and the kind of verification we need to enforce it. And that's, again, why I asked this question, and maybe both you gentlemen could respond to that. I'm not saying that is what the outcome will be, or, ultimately it's up to President Trump. But what I'm saying, is it possible to keep that stranglehold on with the blockade, even though, the tyrants, the IRGC won't give up right away, and secure the Strait of Hormuz while we continue to put that pressure on them for a result that can work for this country and the world? I'd like you to give me some more comment, both of you gentlemen.
Sir, I'll take a moment here and talk about pressure. And what you're really alluding to is what the entirety of the interagency is working on, with a hat tip toward Secretary Bessent, Secretary Rubio, and the rest of the interagency. The totality of total pressure, which the military element is just one component on, is what the regime in Iran is feeling right now. And I think there's no shortage of ability to hold that pressure. The decision on for how long to hold that pressure is, of course, a political one and within our civilian leadership. But I would highlight that they are absolutely feeling that pressure, not just from the blockade, as the Secretary talked about, but the continuation of sanctions that Treasury and others have put on there, and we retain a range of military options.
Well, I 100% agree with you, but their ability, the regime's ability to endure pain is significant because they just put it on their people. My point is keeping that pressure on them, but at the same time secure on us and our allies. And that's what I'm asking for more color on, how you effectuate that.
Senator, there are options for that should we go in that direction. There's a multitude of different directions, should the president seek to go that way, that we're prepared to operate on. Evidenced by the destroyers that went in and came back out.
Exactly.
To the great detriment of the limited ability of Iran to defend. I mean, remember, the entire
In 2019, the DIA published that Iran, quote, had swarms of small boats, large inventory of naval mines, an arsenal of anti-ship missiles that can severely disrupt maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. In 2025, after Operation Midnight Hammer, a Brookings expert said, quote, it is wrong to conclude Iran is now a defeated nation and will act accordingly. Iran's demonstrated destructive missile capabilities have penetrated nearly every part of Israel. Iran's arsenal could endanger American forces in the Gulf. And Senator Collins asked General Kane about the extent to which you were briefed and the president was briefed about the very likely outcome of this kinetic engagement. And there are some data points that seem to indicate that we did not see all of this coming or that we didn't account for it. We may have been briefed on it, but we didn't account for it. Parts of the THAAD and Patriot systems in South Korea were moved to the Middle East. This is after the war. After the war, munitions were moved from around the world to defend U.S. sites in the region. There was a rush to evacuate United States personnel, and Iran struck more than 200 structures and equipment at 16 U.S. sites. So, Secretary, can you just reassure us that this was all foreseen and part of the plan, or can you tell us whether there were any surprises here?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I can reassure you that it was all accounted for. Every aspect of this was poured over by the Joint Staff, by civilian leadership, and represented in pursuit of a very clear goal. And the chairman laid out correctly what the metrics militarily were from the beginning, whether it's ballistic missiles, Iran's Navy. You know, you can't contest a blockade if you don't have a conventional Navy, destroying the defense industrial base. But it was all in service of ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon.
So as a for example,
I mean, that was, so I want you to know, it was all seen through the lens of preventing Iran from having.
Yeah, I understand that's the underlying objective, and I do not dispute the military success. I don't think there's any doubt that when the most powerful, most well-funded, most technologically advanced, most disciplined, most trained military in human history sets out to do something, they almost always accomplish it. And so that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just wondering why we're moving THAAD assets from South Korea after the war started. I'm just wondering why there was a scramble to evacuate personnel, and I'm wondering why the President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, said that he was shocked that Iran would retaliate by striking other countries in the region. This was not just foreseeable, it was foreseen. It was, you know, this is, you don't need to get into a skiff to understand that their likely play was to asymmetrically retaliate and then to close the strait. And then it happened, and then the president said, gosh, who could have seen this coming? I'm just trying to figure out, for those of us on the left and the right who are wary of regime change wars, who are wary of happy talk, who have learned through terrible experience the cost of this kind of adventurism. Why is this any different, and why didn't we see this coming?
I appreciate your lauding of the force up front, and earnestly, that it's the greatest fighting force on planet Earth. But that was the same fighting force that surrendered to Iranian fast boats under the Biden administration. We all remember the pictures. Remember the Americans with their hands above their head at gunpoint of the Iranians? It's because they didn't have leadership like President Trump, who empowered them to do what was necessary. The Biden administration allowed them to pursue nuclear ambitions, didn't do anything about it. President Trump stepped in. We factored all the risk and ranges of options, put in maximum defensive capability for our troops as we could in real time. Empowering the CENTCOM commander with everything he needed to ensure this mission could be as successful as possible, knowing there are branches and sequels of every operation that have to be accounted for.
I'm going to
factor the Navy. You might wonder,
Secretary,
why would you sink the Navy if you're trying to prevent a nuclear Iran? There's reasons for that, because you're planning for contingencies in other ways that this could go as well.
Secretary, I'm trying to stay on time here. I hear what you're saying. I just don't hear an answer to the question of why we had to take certain actions that could have been taken before the kinetic engagement and would have kept our assets and our personnel more safe and would have looked and actually been more planful, more thoughtful, more well executed. Why are we doing all of this stuff as if it's a scramble if all of this stuff was foreseen?
I think I'm quite confident, along with the CENTCOM commanders, that we took every action possible to ensure that we were prepared for this conflict.
Thank you.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, gentlemen, thank you. I wanted to start off my questions with a focus on the reconciliation package. I know that it has not yet been introduced, but we're told $350 billion. Here's my concern, and I'm just going to be really direct. We've got a second reconciliation that we're going to be dealing with in these next few weeks regarding immigration enforcement, and we're halfway through a calendar year. A third reconciliation may or may not happen. I'm just being direct and upfront. I think certainly the focus will be to try to move us to that. But here's my concern. If we have a $350 billion sitting in the reconciliation package, you look at what is contained in that. 53 of your 85 requested F-35s. So I look at that and say, wow, if the reconciliation bill fails or doesn't advance, you drop below your own FY26 fighter procurement baseline. Over $53 billion for drone dominance. I think this is all something we support. Over $113 billion for munitions production and industrial base investment. There's other areas. So here's my question. I worry about us banking on a third reconciliation package. I know we don't want to engage in the speculative here, particularly if it's a negative, but I'm worried about the committee accepting a defense budget where effectively a quarter of it, including some of the bread and butter procurement requirements, depends on a third reconciliation package that may be an uphill climb. And so I don't know, Mr. Secretary, if you can kind of walk me through why I shouldn't be worried about this, why what is included in the base budget bill will be the good coverage that we need, and it is not necessarily dependent on an additive of the reconciliation.
Senator, I appreciate that perspective and share your concern. That's why one of the main efforts setting aside operations and everything we do in real time for the troops is ensuring that both the base discretionary budget and reconciliation are passed so that President Trump's historic budget is realized. Because of the underinvestment of the past, whether it's continuing resolutions or Biden budgets, we need to supercharge.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. You know, I first ditched big wireless and started using Mint Mobile way back in 2019. Back then, you could get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Today, Mint Mobile's premium wireless has gone up by, okay, wow, that's it, zero. It's gone up $0 a month since 2019. That doesn't seem fiscally responsible to me, but again, you're welcome. And I'm not an accountant. Hate math, always hated math.
You have the reconciliation. I want to ask about the Iran authorization. No great secret around here. I have been talking about an authorization of use of military force. I understand that the administration has made clear that you believe that the actions taken thus far fall under the President's Article 2 authority. I think reasonable people have disagreed about the boundaries of presidential war powers for a long time, but the war powers resolution is pretty clear here. It requires the president to terminate hostilities within 60 days absent congressional authorization. I think it's important that we in Congress actually assert our own role and responsibility to this. That 60-day clock expired April 28th. And then on the 1st, the administration sent letters to congressional leaders asserting that the hostilities has ended. But I think where there is confusion is when the president says hostilities have ended, we still have 15,000 troops that are forward deployed, more than 20 warships, and an active naval blockade. CENTCOM has redirected 61 commercial vessels, disabled tankers. In other words, it doesn't appear that hostilities have ended. And so the question to you is whether or not the administration has considered or had intended to seek an authorization of use of military force from the Congress.
Senator, our view is that should the president make the decision to recommence, that we would have all the authorities necessary to do so.
Do you think that it would be helpful to the president if it was made clear that in fact the Congress did provide an AUMF?
I think the president, our view is that he has all the authorities he needs under Article 2 to execute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, here's where we are. The vote is about over. The secretary has to get with the president on the China trip. I'm going to ask Senator Murkowski to wrap up. And thank you all for being here.
Baldwin, Shaheen, and Kennedy.
Hmm?
Baldwin, Shaheen, and Kennedy still have questions. Wrap up after.
Let me see what I'm getting told here. Yeah, obviously there's not a whole lot of time for a second round, so we'll get through everybody. And Senator Murkowski, I appreciate your taking over.
Senator Baldwin. Thank you. Secretary Hegseth, Chairman Kane, thank you for being here today. Today is the first time either of you are appearing before this subcommittee since the abrupt choice was made to cancel the acquisition of the Constellation-class frigate, which was being built in Wisconsin. These ships were meant to provide vital capability to the Navy in the event of a future war against China. And they were certainly part of our calculus of deterrence through strength. Canceling this program placed thousands of jobs in Wisconsin at risk and left our fleet less prepared. You know, President Trump has talked a lot about making ships in America again. But I have to tell you, dramatic and misguided decisions like this pull the rug out from under our shipyards. The U.S. shipbuilding industry needs stability if we are ever going to compete with Chinese shipyards. Wisconsin workers who have decades of experience building world-class vessels that defend our nation, that serve commerce and provide transportation, they need stability as well. So I'd like to start with a question to you, Chairman Kane, on the medium landing ships. The Navy's new amphibious ships, which will now be built at the same Wisconsin shipyards working on we're working on the Constellation class less than a year ago. How important are medium landing ships to future U.S. operations in the event of a war with China?
Well, Senator, thanks for the question. And I do want to highlight, no matter what the policy decisions are, the great workers up there and in your state. And as the Joint Force considers the options that the medium landing ship would bring to the table in terms of assuring a mobility gap and filling that gap and allowing us to project power at the Secretary and the President's choice in choosing, while not stepping into the Navy's boundaries and mindful that the CNO and SECNAV and acting SECNAV in this case will have views. I hope we'll carefully consider this capability and then, if appropriate, bring it forward to the Joint Force.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the department included the request for funding the construction of 6 medium landing ships in that partisan part of the budget request, the reconciliation, which is in danger of potentially not even passing this year. To be frank, it does not give me confidence that we are taking this program seriously. What would the impact be if Congress did not appropriate funding for the medium landing ships in fiscal year 27? And are you comfortable with the pace that the Navy is planning on building them, Chairman Kane?
Well, I'll acknowledge that I think it was yesterday or the day before that they released their shipbuilding plan. And given all the things that I'm juggling in this job that I'm so lucky to have, I've not gone and done a deep dive. So I'd like to come back to you.
Please do.
If you're okay with it on that matter, so that don't wing it.
Yeah, thank you. I want to now turn to the war with Iran. Yesterday, I had a chance to meet with service members who were injured in the opening days of the war. They struggled to receive adequate and timely care for their injuries in the Middle East, and the fighting kept them from being quickly evacuated to Landstuhl after being injured. These service members have since been diagnosed with traumatic brain injury, but initially struggled to get properly evaluated or treated, in part because some of our military hospitals overseas and in the U.S. did not have the capacity for them. They had to wait for more than 3 weeks to receive the treatment they needed, and it seems clear to me that our military medical system was not prepared to treat those injured in this war. Secretary Hegseth, did DOD review our military health system's readiness to treat those injured in a war with Iran, and did that impact your recommendation to begin Operation Epic Fury?
Well, the view of the department was always to, as expeditiously as possible, move anyone injured that needed further care to Europe for that care, with the recognition that, thankfully, 90% of those that have been injured in Epic Fury have returned to duty. So most of those injuries have been minor enough that they return, but we always catalog if there could be future complications to ensure that they get care in the future.
It seemed to me, from what I heard, that we weren't prepared in theater, we weren't in Germany, and we weren't prepared immediately upon these soldiers' return to the U.S. Can you commit to ensuring that every service member, including my constituents, will receive